Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Howell Township Workshop regular meeting, agenda meeting. It's January 17th. It's a little after 7 p.m. Welcome. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask that Ms. Woolman please read the opening statement and then call the roll.
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner: by the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on December 21, 2005, by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for publication on December 21, 2005, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on December 21, 2005. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows: upon exiting the meeting room, to the rear, there to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room, at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call: Mr. Malavey, Mrs. Showmaker, Mr. Tabasco, Mr. Walsh,
Present.
Mayor DeBella.
Here. Okay, we have reason to go into executive session for a brief period to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege, personnel, contract negotiations, litigation, and acquisition of property. Accordingly, Ms. Woolman, would you please read the appropriate statement to go into executive?
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meeting of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and that the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
We need a motion, please.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any remarks? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a brief executive session. We will be concluded and back to the regular public as quickly as possible. I'd ask that the team that I'm looking at with respect to the one matter, Ms. Pombachi and team, if you could come up first, we'll get to you guys right away. We shall be back very shortly. Penny, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to call the meeting back to order. Our apologies for the lateness. We have already had our call to order, the opening statement, and the roll call. I'm going to ask that everyone please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask that everyone please remain standing in observation of a moment of silent thought on behalf of our troops defending this country all over the globe. Thank you. We're going to do a acceptance of the minutes. I'd ask that a member of the council please move the minutes of November 22, 29, December 6, 13, 20, and 22.
So moved, Your Honor.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. We're going to do reports of township officials. We are then going to have public participation in that this is a joint workshop and regular meeting. I have a statement I'm going to read this evening. I'll make copies of this available at the conclusion of my reading the statement. To the residents of Howell, earlier today I was contacted by the Howell Township Clerk informing me that 3 residents filed a petition to recall me today as your mayor. I have enormous respect for the law of our state, our great democracy, and the will of the people. However, while I respect the recall process, I know this particular action is completely politically motivated and designed to embarrass Howell Township and me personally. Please know this, and let me be clear. I will not be intimidated. I will not be bullied. by special interests who have ambitions to hurt our community through malicious and trumped-up politically motivated actions. I have and will continue to stand my ground and make the tough decisions necessary to help move Howell Township in the right direction. When I campaigned for mayor, I promised to do everything in my power to make Howell Township a better and more affordable place to live, work, and raise a family. I remain committed to these important causes, and nothing will dissuade me. I had a member of the development community stand in these chambers and threaten to kill me if I proceeded with ethics hearings, and I did. And if I can stand up to a corrupt developer now under indictment by the FBI, no one will intimidate me from leading this community in the most ethical, honest way for which I was elected to do. And I want to be very clear on that. This recall is solely intended to embarrass me and the office of the mayor of Howell Township. Along with it, it'll embarrass our community and the great people of Howell Township. I am proud of my record as mayor. I'm committed to ethics reform. In fact, I wrote the law on ethics in this community. I'm committed to open space. In fact, in the past 3 years, we have preserved more open space than in the collective 200-year history of Howell Township. I'm committed to farmland preservation. In fact, because of the work of many volunteers, we have contract agreements on 1,000 acres of farmland to be preserved. Most importantly, I'm committed to tax reform. I presided over historic and challenging budget cuts that staved off a massive tax increase. I will continue to work to find ways to make our community a safer and more affordable place to live. As I mentioned before, I believe and am convinced this recall is intended to embarrass me, my office in this community. I believe that at times we will all come to disagree on certain issues. That comes with the process. However, I'm going to continue to lead our community in the best way I know how, and I will vote from the heart, as I have done from the first time I accepted my oath of office. I love our community, and I will do everything within my power to protect it. Most important, I will never back down when challenged by those whose sole ambition is to hurt our community. I was duly elected your mayor in a legitimate election by the people of Howell Township. I have and continue to work for all 52,000 residents, and I will not be distracted by this latest attempt to hurt our community. It is a privilege and an honor to serve this office, and so I will not kowtow to what amounts to an attempt to overthrow this municipal government. I ask for your support as we confront this latest challenge. I'd like to know what you think. Please call me at home. My phone number is 732-761-8734. My number in this office is 732-938-4500, extension 2155. I'd like to know how you feel and how the residents of the community feel about this latest attack on our government. In closing, I ask that you stand with me in protecting the institution of our government and the office of mayor, and in confronting these political hurdles designed to distract us from doing the business of the people. I thank you for your attention. May God bless America, and may God bless our troops. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I have under reports.
Can we add comments to that?
Please, go right ahead.
You want to go first, Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I think you said it all, and you said it very diligently. However, I'd like to add my own comments and my own feelings about this issue. I received a very disturbing news from the mayor himself when he called me at my employment, and he notified me of such petition. And I, quite frankly, am quite disappointed and embarrassed by the irresponsibility or the irresponsible, liberal-minded political adversaries that are trying to recall our mayor. Once again, they have chosen to make Howell Township the laughingstock of Monmouth County. Although I firmly believe in democracy and its process, I have to question the motive, the true motive of these individuals. I'm often reminded that whatever we do up here, no matter how well-intended we are, we're going to have people who disagree with us and our policy making. I often disagree with the mayor and others up here as they disagree with me. But we do so respectfully and mindful of each other's opinions, and we all take at heart the oath of this office. It is quite disturbing that such actions happens here in Howell Township, a community which I love. I chose to come here 11 years ago. I could have gone anywhere. Perhaps some of you wish that I would have gone someplace else. But I like it here. I love it here. I'm not going anywhere. The truth of the matter is that we have tackled on a lot of controversial issues over the past 3 years. And we have done so to better the community. It would have been the easy way out to just sit back and do nothing and go with the flow with business as usual. But we haven't done that because that's not what you elected us to do. You elected us to make those tough decisions. And we all do what's best for the community as far as we can tell, according to our acknowledgement, and with the facts that are presented in front of us, we make these tough decisions. And obviously, we're not going to always agree on every decision that we do make. I believe that Mayor DeBella, who I'm proud to call my friend, is doing an outstanding job in leading this community down the right path. What has been done to this man, in my opinion, is nothing more than an attempt to embarrass him, his family, cause personal harm, but most important, to embarrass our community. You're questioning, by doing this man's character and his integrity. I'd like to speak about that. Mayor DeBella is accessible, available to all Howard Township residents, all the time. There haven't been, in my experience here in Howard Township, there hasn't been a mayor who has been more accessible and available to the people than Mayor DeBella has. This man has created his own personal website to make sure that if you have any concerns, questions, comments, that he can respond to those. He has a weekly column on the local newspaper to update all Howard Township residents and keep them informed as to what's going on here at Town Hall. Mayor DeBella has taken time away from his treasured time, I may add, away from his family, which I know how he feels towards, especially his kids. When we are here at night, and again, we ask to be here, so I'm not asking for pity. All I'm asking is for a little understanding of what we go through, because sometimes perhaps things get lost in the shuffle, and we forget about what's really important here, which is people's lives. He takes time away from his family. He doesn't see many nights his kids going to bed. He's not there to say goodnight to them, just like most of us do. He doesn't have time to play with him as often as he wishes, I'm sure, because he's doing what you elected him to do, and he's proud of that. I'm proud of our mayor. I support him. I stand behind him. Also, I may add, which I'm going to embarrass him a little bit with what I'm going to say, because I don't think this is something that he takes pride in. But I'm going to say it because it's important, I think, that people understand. This man does that without any monetary compensation. He donates his salary to local charities, as others do up here. And I commend him for that. For whatever reason, there's a group of individuals out there who obviously disagree with the mayor and the policy making. And it's okay to disagree. Let's sit down, let's debate them, let's discuss the issues. And at the end of the night, we may still disagree, and we will do so respectfully, and keeping in mind that we all have the best interests of Howell Township at heart. I urge all of Howell residents to stand up and support this man. Stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for my friend, our mayor. Send a clear and loud message that these irresponsible actions, which I consider nothing but more than a political stunt, will be tolerated here in Howard Township. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Tabasco, you have a report.
Yeah, I didn't actually prepare comments as Juan did. I heard about this very late this afternoon, and I will say that the three of us, Joe, myself, and Juan, ran in 2002 together under a motto that was vision, character, leadership, and integrity. And I'm going to tell you that we are all very comfortable in our own skin, all three of us, Cynthia included as well, that the objectives that we set when we all campaigned the last 5 years, when you include Cynthia, the last 3 years when you include us, were all well stated. And we attacked every single one of them. Many administrations before us left a lot of the difficult issues that face our town on the table, not to be addressed while they were in these seats. And the reason was they were all very volatile and would not create popularity with the people sitting where we're sitting right now. We said to each other, if we serve just one term, we're still going to do what we principally think is right. We're going to tell the people, and we're going to go after these things. We will allow due process. Anybody that comes before us with something, we have more public opinion time now than ever before. You can come before us and have your due process. We will then debate here, and we debate, as Juan said sometimes, well, we differ, but we come to some consensus at the end, and we usually move on to the next issue. This is not just an attack on Joe. I want to be clear that it is on Joe because he's the one being recalled, but this is an attack on the integrity of all of us sitting right here, and I'm telling you, it's wrong. We do what we do to the best of our abilities for really no little monetary reward, as Juan has already mentioned, purely because of the goodness of our hearts, and purely because we have the best interests of the town in our minds, souls, hearts, etc. Some of the reasons people state for the reason they want to recall Joe, this is the main reason I keep hearing, that we're all pro-development. That's a bunch of crap. It really is. It's just a pure, outright bunch of crap. We will allow anybody. If Jeff up here came before us and said, I have an application I want to present to the town, and it was for 1,000 units to be put on Casino Drive, we would say, Jeff, you're allowed your due process. Come present to the town. That case would be heard. But because it's heard and we allow Jeff his due process does not mean we're pro-development. All right, I've heard stuff about Frequency Engineering Laboratory and about AST and about PRCs and about the Fountains Project. None of those things became the things they were because we stuck to our internal beliefs and principles. The Fountains Project was going to be over 400 units. It is now 96 senior units plus 26 single-family homes instead of 400 units, principally because the people sitting right here, Joe and I, with tremendous effort with the help of our professionals 3 years ago, did a business deal that made that become what it is. Yes, there was raid, and yes, they brought it to the attention of the town, but it took us sitting here to get that done. So I don't want to hear about the fountains being something we did wrong. We actually saved a lot of future pain for the township by doing what we did. On Frequency Engineering, we almost last year made that toxic waste dump go away and the tax issue go away. It's still here. We're still addressing it right now. With regards to AST, we have some property we acquired, an historical purchase of property for the township, 300 acres, which we will someday do something with. As part of that purchase, knowing that there was an objection to a COA plan, we talked to that developer. we created what was called a Memorandum of Understanding, that they would be allowed to have their due process, just like any one of you, again, could have, to present an application in an attempt to do what's best for the town, not for now, but maybe 10 years from now, for 15 years from now. So we allowed that due process to happen. Does that mean we're pro-development? No. We tried to create a business environment where the best interests of the town, not just for today, but for the next 20 to 50 years are put in mind. As far as PRCs, we have to address the tax issue in this town. Is the number one reason people hate living in New Jersey. It's the number one reason they're fleeing. Whether people like it or not, there is also a maturing population in Howell, just like is the rest of the state. There is no available units for people like that. Just like there's no available affordable housing in Howell Township. It took me, who was now renting a condo, a long period of time to find something that I could now live in. All right, so we have to address those considerations. We can't just say no to everything. There's other factors that play into everything. And I'll tell you, just like Juan said before, what we do is not always popular. We know that. We're going to please probably 2/3 of the people in each decision we make, and 1/3 of us are going to be violently mad at us. And we understand that and accept that, because we chose to run and knowing those things were going to happen, that people would actually despise us when we came to certain decisions. But we still are comfortable in our own skin. And I'm very proud to say that this guy should hold his head high. He's somebody I know, just as Juan, just as Cynthia, even Bobby now. I know he does everything with the goodness in his heart and good intentions. He wants to stand up for his family. He wants to stand up for everybody in this community. His attack that came today is uncalled for. I'm a big believer in the process. This process is just bull. It's absolute bull. He ran twice already in the last 3 years. The last time he won by 2-1. So what's this all about, right? If you don't like what happened, 3 of us are running this year. All right, he loses his power as a public majority if us 3 lose. That's a few months away. So if you don't like what we're doing, I'll accept that. But I'm telling you, I'm sticking to my principles. I'm sticking to what the people of this town elected us to do, which is to represent the best interest of the entire town. I know Joe will, I know Juan will, I know Cynthia will, and I'm pretty sure Bobby will too, even though we've had some disagreement. I got to tell you, when we first came onto this dais, there were many times I wanted to jump over and attack the people that are sitting in that row. I wanted to attack the people sitting next to me. But we've learned to work together and work well together. We have great debate. We hear it from all the people that come from other towns, and they come in front of this dais and sit in front of us, and they can't believe how well we debate things. And then they can't believe the good decisions that we come to. And they've been to other towns. So although this town is sometimes mocked for the enthusiasm we have, people do admire the way we do conduct business around here. We're now televised, so people see it. So anyway, I'm very proud of you. I agree with you that this is a load of crock. Stand up for yourself. We'll stand behind you. I'm very proud that you are our mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mrs. Showmaker, do you have under reports?
Well, we're going to skip the reports. I don't have a speech or many comments prepared, such as Mr. Malave and Mr. Tabasco. However, Joe and I did run together, and I have the utmost respect for Mayor DeBella, in that I believe that every decision that the mayor does make, he makes from his heart and in the best interest of this community. And if this is a politically motivated act, it saddens me to think that we've worked very hard to bring respect back to our community. And once again, and I hope this is not, because I truly believe we live in the United States of America and we have a democracy and people have a right to their opinions. But if this is a politically motivated act and we are once again bringing disrespect onto our community, it's very sad for me, because I've worked 5 years for this community to try to bring respect back to our front door, so the people in the county recognize that we deserve our fair share here in our community. And I truly respect the mayor's decision. I stand behind him. I think that he has worked very hard. He has made a lot of tough decisions that I myself would not have been prepared to make. And we've had a tough year. We've gone through it. The mayor has held his head high and stood ground. And Mayor, I commend you for that, because I can tell you in the 5 years that I've sat here, I don't know another person that would have taken on some of the challenges that you've had.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, under reports, do you have anything?
No reports, but I'd like to say something. It is a sad day for Howell. I mean, all over Monmouth County, in our own developments. This is not a nice thing being spoken about our township or our mayor. I can't tell you I'm happy with it. If anybody thinks that I politically have anything to do with this, you're wrong. I do not approve of it. And believe me, as I sit up here, me and the mayor do not see eye to eye on things. He says we see eye to eye 90% of the time. I say less than that. But, I mean, we talk about it. We go about our decisions the way we think's best, and it is what it is. I think what's going on in this community, some, is it has to stop till the victor goes to spoils. I believe people all over are getting tired of this politics as usual, no matter where it is. And it needs to stop. I believe a lot of the times the best decisions are being made by people in power. Even here, who I disagree with. I mean, there were things I didn't know that now I'm privy to information and I'm having to make decisions. And, you know, it's not so easy sitting on the other side and playing Monday morning quarterback. Okay? And I'm all right with that. I mean, I'll live with those decisions. I'll live with the results. I'll live with how you judge me. Really don't have an issue. I mean, I have some severe issues, and I'm trying to do what I can. The mayor speaks about the process. Well, I got into the process because I had disagreements. I didn't like the way things were being handled from my view, and I'm not saying I'm right all the time. I mean, this is a sad day for our township. It really is. There was nothing good about this today for Howell. And for that, we're worse off. We must get back to the business of this town. We have a lot of delicate situations in balance right now. We need a town manager as soon as possible, start running this town on a day-to-day basis. We have a budget to do. I mean, we're in pretty deep at the moment, all of us, not just the five of us up here. All of us collectively are in pretty deep right now. Got a reevaluation hanging over our heads. Got people all over this town worried about if they're going to be able to afford to live here. I mean, let's get after doing the business of this town. Everybody. I mean, I don't care what party you're from. I've been asked from all different parties, different things. And I answer the same way now every time. I would do whatever if I thought it was in the best interest of the Township of Howell. Period. If I thought it was in the best interest of the Township of Howell for me to resign today, I'd walk away. I did the best thing for the township. I mean, let's all get on that same page. And a lot of the things the mayor's doing, you know, talking with them and going back and forth, there's a side to his case he's making, which is true. I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's true. It doesn't make him wrong. Because we disagree doesn't make one person right and one person wrong. He was elected by the people of this town. I've said all along, and I've met with some individuals from both parties and my own party. I'm a party of one, folks. Okay? He was elected by the people of this town. You asked him to serve. I have no issue with them today. I have no issue with them on this. We all need to get after the business of Howell Township. I believe we have some very big crises on our hands. And if we don't learn to work together, this party, that party, any party, the next party, we're just going to get further and further in trouble. I wish we could focus on working together to solve the problems of the Township of Howell today. And let's leave it at that. And for the record, I have nothing to do with this whatsoever. I don't want anybody bring my name into this at all. God bless you all, and God bless Howell Township.
We're going to go into public portion only because this is a combined workshop, regular meeting, and I want to thank my colleagues for their kind sentiments. I'm also a bit taken aback because my mom and dad are here tonight, and my dad called me today at my office when he had gotten word from my wife that this had been taking place, and as is often the case in my life, my parents are with me. And they happen to be the only two people with the permission to call me Joey, by the way. And if you have issue with that, they're sitting in the middle. I'll make sure everybody heard that.
I have one more comment.
So thank you, Mom and Dad, as always, for supporting me. Go ahead, Peter.
There's nothing better than blood, right?
Exactly
Much
right.
But I will tell the people out there and on cable TV, this guy's flesh and blood. We all are. Right? This is not a game. Some people think we're all pawns up here to be moved around on a chessboard. That's not right. We're real flesh and blood people. Doing some of the things that have happened today and then over the course of the past year, I should say, people, I guess, tend to think that we're not real. That's not right. We actually do exist. We are flesh and blood. We have families. We really, we have kids. We have wives, spouses. Again, please don't use us as pawns. If you have good intentions, you want the process to work, well, that's why you have the vote. Come out in November and vote. This is really ridiculous. I'm glad you're our mayor, Mayor. And I'm glad your family did come out to support you tonight.
Thank you again. All right, we're going to go into public portion. Let the record reflect it's 8:52 or so. We will go for an hour, and we have 13 distinguished speakers. First person is Mrs. Barbara Dixell. Welcome, Mrs. Dixell. Come on up. As always, please give us your name and address for the record.
Barbara Dixell, The Villages, Howell Township. Mayor,
Welcome.
I have to hang maps.
Okay.
I have to bear with me a minute.
You know what? I'll ask Mr. Newcomb and the deputy mayor if they'd give you be gentlemen and give you a hand, please.
This we don't have to hang. You can just see it. Yeah, no, it's The Villages and the Village.
You're next. You're next.
Okay, I'm gonna get. I'll just hang. You guys take this one up there, so you'll all look at it together. You gotta hang this one.
Hey, Joe, you got another planning board meeting?
You're up.
Okay.
Thanks for your comments. It means a lot to me. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Dixon, why don't you, obviously, if you can, mindful of the other speakers, if you could get us through it. No, that's fine. Just please, as succinctly as you can.
This is really very important stuff.
Okay, of course.
About a week or two ago, last meeting, I took pictures of the McMansions that they're building on County Road 524. And I did come to the council, as the county committee woman from the Villages to tell you that I thought that these houses were real close to the perimeter of the Villages, and that on December 19th, 2002, when the final resolution was written for Manasquan River Park, that the U.S. Homes Attorney, John Junko, and I went head-to-head on item number 8 on the final resolution that I finally got them to agree to, was that the applicant will agree to a 50-foot, 4-season maintained buffer the entire length of the Village's perimeter, because this development spreads out all the way almost to Havens Bridge Road.
We get that part. So what's happened?
So what's happened now is that I did take pictures, being that some of these are very close. Yes?
First of all, that's in the agreement, right?
That is in the final resolution, number 8.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Something else.
What's happened now is that I did call Tom Savino, Bill Nunziata, and we walked the perimeter one day. And yeah, there are a couple of houses that are real close. However, I had to go to the county because on another matter there's another zoning board question coming up, and I went to the county to ask some questions, and I brought the pictures with me. and I showed them to the county engineer, Mr. Ettore, and they pulled out the Manasquan River Park maps, and we went over them. And I'm going to point out, Mr. Do you have a? No, you didn't bring it with you. Okay, I'm going to go over there, and hopefully my voice will carry.
Or if you take this, Barbara, it will.
There are 7 houses over on Puesto de Gomez, which is in Village 1. So everybody can hear me. Okay, the pink represents the 50-foot FAR buffer. The blue area, these houses, the setback of these houses are within 2 to 5 feet into the buffer.
The setback, Barbara.
The setback, is okay, the back of the houses. It's not the house itself, it's the setback into the buffer. I understand that there are deed restrictions on a lot of these houses, but our concern in the villages is that if this buffer line extends through the back setback of some of these houses, we're concerned that one day we'll wake up and Mrs. Homeowner will decide she wants a shed back there, even with the plantings and the buffer, and we're gonna find we've got a shed and buffer trees pulled out. So, and also in Village 2, you'll notice the 50-foot buffer over here. There's one house on Nicole Court, I think, and the other house in back of it, and this is, I think, 67F in the villages, in back of there. They are on the buffer. There is no setback. They're smack on the buffer. So what we're asking, the yellow represents the buffer with infringement, the size of the homes. The pink shows the 50-foot buffer. The blue shows the infringement into the buffer approximately 2 to 5 feet. I do understand that there are, deed restrictions and whatever, I don't know what houses, but what we're asking for now in the villages is because there is questions about this, what we would like now, and I did go to see Senator Singer, who didn't disagree, that we want a vinyl fence on their side, so that these homeowners know where their property ends.
Okay. Mr. Nunziato, would you please comment? Mrs. Dixell and I spoke this morning, and you and I spoke prior to the meeting. Perhaps you can elaborate on the comments that she's just given, please.
She actually is accurate in all of her depictions on her map. However, what she is using is a final map. Okay, the final map, what that shows in dotted lines is the setbacks of a particular lot. Okay, this development is 142 lots, 110 or 1 acre, 32 or 2 acre. The bulk requirements in either zone is a 50-foot front setback, 30-foot side yard, 40-foot rear yard. So the dotted line across the back where it reaches the villages is 40 feet. The buffer, the perimeter buffer, which is required as condition number 8, as she indicates, is a 50-foot buffer. Therefore, that buffer line, which is shown, is further than the rear yard setback. That does not mean that any of the houses are located within that setback. What that map shows is the building envelope, a dotted line, which shows 40 feet from the back property line. And again, with the 50-foot buffer, there is an overlap, which she is depicting as a 2 to 5 foot, which actually may be as much as 10.
Okay, but the county, they put this out for, the county is the one that depicted this, and they wrote that out for me. So they said.
Again, Barbara, all you're looking at is the layout of the lots. Rear yard setbacks of 40, buffer of 50. So the buffer does encroach into the rear yard setbacks, but it doesn't mean that the houses are incorrectly located. They're not.
The houses may not be, but the setback is. So like I said, in order not to wake up one morning and find out that Mrs. Homeowner decides that she's want a shed back there or a gymnastic thing for her
Again,
kids.
that is a function of the land use office. When they come for a shed or some type of permit deck or something in the rear yards, in-ground pool perhaps, they have to have a copy of their survey, which includes their setbacks and any deed restrictions, any buffers, any drainage easements, or any combination thereof, and they have to meet the required setbacks from those restrictions.
So what's the resolution here? It appears as if these maps are not the maps that reflect all the final details, is what you're suggesting?
These maps just show the layout, the configuration of the lots and any deed restrictions, i.e. buffers, drainage easement, and et cetera.
Okay.
It doesn't show the physical location of the house with respect to any of the property lines. So anybody that was going to build a house and any future accessory structures would have to have an as-built survey and show those structures on as an addition for their permits. Everything you're saying is true, but there are no violations.
Okay. To Mrs. Dixell's request about a fence, can we open up a dialogue with the developer and ask if they would be willing to put a fence along that line so there is no ambiguity with respect to where it ends? And perhaps it should have been in the approval. I mean, none of us I wasn't on the planning board. Who knows why that was not requested? But can we make a request so that there is no ambiguity when these lot owners move in, where their property ends, the fence is there, it ends any question? I mean, I guess there's nothing to stop us from making that request, correct?
No, again, there also is, to your credit, Condition 8 does require a 50-foot landscaped buffer. Okay,
Correct.
the landscaping is not in its entirety at this point. In the spring, they will obviously plant more, and that raises the question, if they were to even agree to put a fence in, particularly where either side of this buffer, you would want this fence.
All right, could we do this, subject to the...
on their side, not mine.
Subject to the council's agreement, could we request that Mr. Nunziato and Mr. Gannon invite Mrs. Dixell, call up the project manager of the development, request a meeting in this building, and have a dialogue around a resolution to putting in a fence or doing whatever is necessary so that you two gentlemen can make sure they understand what their obligations are. We protect the people in the villages, and we try and bring closure to this. Can we make that arrangement? Fair enough?
Mayor,
Council agree? Hold on one second, Mr. Dixell.
Yes.
Agree, Mr. Walsh, you agree?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Mayor, I was told when we finally hammered this number 8 out, I was told I was lucky we got the buffer.
There's no luck involved now. We're here to help you.
And like I said, and they said, I'm looking at land use, and it says trees shall be at least 8 foot in height when planted.
Go ahead, Mrs. Dixell.
Okay, again, like I said, I did give you the pictures. You've all seen them.
Correct.
They are close, and like I said, you know what? I don't disagree with anybody moving in and building a house. We also have the right to live in peace and with dignity, and that's what we're asking.
Agreed.
We're not asking a hell of a lot.
All right,
We
well-
don't want the houses bulldozed. We don't, just give us a fence.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask for your help. Mr. Nunziato and Mr. Gannon will arrange a meeting with the project managers of the development company with you to participate to
And we
clear
have-
up any
okay,
questions.
Also,
Okay?
in here tonight is Mr. Bastari, the board president, so
Okay.
I would like him also to be
Welcome.
recognized if you want to. And also, I'm requesting also that whether you whether you agree or not, I'm just requesting that, to me, the planning board and the zoning board needs to be noticed, and they need to be told, or whatever, that, just, we can't allow builders, planners, engineers they have to follow Howell Township's ordinances, and that's what I would
Agreed.
request you do also.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Nunziato? Looks like you want to say something.
No. I thought that's what we do.
Well, you know what, I mean, I don't, like I say, Mr. Nunziato, I respect you, I respect your position, I don't agree with you. I went to see Senator Singer, and I'm not gonna tell you what he told me.
Well, the senator called me, and he did tell me what he told you.
Okay.
And he
And-
asked that we give you every opportunity to present your case. He
And
suggested
didn't
you brought up...
disagree, and he absolutely did not disagree with me, and what I'm giving you now is from the county. They
Yes.
wrote this.
Well, we appreciate your commentary. We're going to get that meeting set up as soon as possible, and we'll look for your participation
The
in
next
it.
thing I'm gonna bring up is the village's streets. You all have a lawyer's letter from our attorney. I think, again, you've heard me for years, and people, I'm tired, another reason why I went to the senator, I'm sick and tired of being told, oh, we don't agree, we don't have to fix your streets. I'm sick of it. So now, you've all gotten the lawyer's letter, you've all gotten, a copy of the 1982 ordinance. They're here. It's done. It's on the books. I'm so sorry, but the township is responsible for the village's streets. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to include the map of all 6 villages. And for your information, I know Bill and I have hammered this out before. V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, and V6 means Village 1, Village 2, Village 3, Village 4, Village 5, and Village 6. So they didn't have to spell it out in the damn ordinance. They said V for 1, that's what, it's the same thing. You guys have to fix our streets. We've had sinkholes, we've had people fall down, we've had people sue the villages, we've lost our insurance several times. Enough, it's gotta stop. We need help. Have to fix the streets. Listen, when George Vetke was the engineer, they ran out of money. They got as far as Doc Hammarskjöld. You did half of Parkway Drive, you were supposed to do the whole thing, did half of it. Okay, here it is, it's gotta be done, once and for all. We
Mrs.
got
Dixell,
holes, we got everything.
as you know, we have allocated $2.8 million
And we're
in a
not on the
road
list again.
improvement plan to try and address the whole town as fairly and as methodically as we can. I have not personally yet seen the letter you speak of. It
Well,
might
here
still be
goes.
with, no, we believe you. I'm sure it's still, with the clerk. But at this,
The rollers in my copy machine at home have to be replaced.
I'm sure you've given this to many of our predecessors, and I apologize that whatever reason, this hasn't happened. I'm going to ask the council's indulgence to please agree to direct Mr. Gannon to review this, to review all the corresponding information, and to give us a written decision with respect to what our responsibilities are pursuant to this material. Everybody agree?
Guys, it's 9 times already.
Yes.
You agree. Mr. Walsh, agree?
Yes, I agree.
Mrs. Showmaker?
With one comment, Mayor. This is a situation that's been before us for 5 years. I want to see closure on this. I want us to,
couldn't agree more.
Barbara, I want, when the attorney comes back with, I want us to become to an agreement, and I want it to have closure to this.
I want the attorneys to meet. Our
Well-
attorney, our board, you guys. I wanted a meeting with our management company. I want everybody to be
Mrs.
in the
Dixell,
meeting.
I want to sit in that meeting. We had a
Oh,
meeting
please,
tonight.
Bima, I'd love that.
We had a meeting tonight on the Windmill Club for an issue that's been going around in the circular file for years. We had a meeting tonight. We ended it, over and done, situation resolved.
Bless you,
So
my guys.
we're going to get
I'd love to do
involved,
that.
and it's going to get fixed. Mr. Gannon, do you have any comments on this? Have you seen this material?
Yeah, that's yours. I'm saying, the rollers in my copy machine need to be fixed.
Okay, hold on. Mr. Gannon's going to say something.
We're familiar with some of the background material. We'll take a look at it again and give you a definitive result from a legal standpoint. And then you might want to have the engineering department give you an economic impact with regard to our decision.
Okay. Can I ask, with council's indulgence, that we ask you to have this for us by the February 7th workshop, a written legal opinion?
But can there also be a meeting to take place between our
Yeah.
attorney and you
Hold on one
guys
second.
and our
How
board?
soon can you take a look at this, Mr. Gannon? Give us a timeline.
I can look at it, next week, but as far as meeting with their counsel, I don't know if I can do that by the 7th. Not that I have anything against lawyers, but
Meeting with who? Oh,
You
meeting
wanted me
with...
to meet with
We
the
know you
counsel,
don't,
so-
Mr. Gannon.
All right, why don't we at least why don't
their
you
bills
work
in.
on something from us by the 7th?
Okay.
I would ask you have your attorney contact Mr. Gannon. I'm certain they can speak over the telephone.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate your comments, as always, Mrs.
Okay.
Dixell. Thank you.
But again, and just work on this fence, because like I said, the
Thanks,
county
Barbara.
wouldn't write infringement on it, and
We're
then
going
the
to
city
ask,
wouldn't
Barbara. Help.
agree with me.
We're going to ask.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Dixell.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Next person is Mr. Jeff DiMatteo.
And you can keep that other copy of that, okay?
Okay.
Because I got 2 copies of the same thing.
Thank you. Welcome, Captain DiMatteo.
Thank you.
Just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Jeff DiMatteo, 3 Redwood Road, captain in the Howell First Aid
Hey,
Squad.
Jeff, I didn't mean to embarrass you before. You just happened
No,
to be
that's
sitting
all
right
right.
there. So I know you don't have 1,000-unit development to talk
I
about.
just got a couple things to say. Usually I come here when I need something. Well, tonight with hearing about this recall, I do need something. I want to go into a little bit of history about First Aid Squad. And what I do need is I need the mayor and the council, the entire council, to stay exactly the way it is right now. I was up here last time I needed something about 6 years ago when our First Aid Squad had a Jackson Township First Aid ambulance in the building. We had a Lakewood ambulance in the building. We have 60 members. We had to borrow 2 ambulances because this town would not buy us an ambulance. Every ambulance was broken down. We are responding to a CPR in progress with a defib that a battery died on. And you can pull back records how I was in this council meeting fighting for batteries for a defib because we didn't have the money. Now, the problem that we have is we have all this equipment, no place to put it. We're answering a lot of calls. The mayor has worked out a great plan with us, with the police department, an EMS division with the police department, and the residents of this town are protected 100% on the EMS side. And I can't thank you guys enough for everything you've done for us. You know, anything you need, we're here to back you 100%. Every time I call you, you back us, and you always help us. So anything you guys need,
Thank you.
we're here to help you.
Thank you, Captain.
And you're always saying that we're the heroes. You're always saying that at a meeting.
You are.
Well, we can't be the heroes without you guys. Without the equipment and the help that you guys been giving us to do our job, we can't be the heroes without you.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Mary Lukowski and Marta Hodem, and I apologize if I've mispronounced any of those names. Come on, come up forward and welcome. You are?
Mary Lukowski. at
Welcome, Ms. Lukowski.
312 Delphi Road.
I know we corresponded on email, I think, last night.
Yes, thank you. Thank
Welcome.
you for your response.
My pleasure.
I'm
If
gonna
you
keep
just
this-
try and speak into the mic as best you can.
Okay, I'm going to keep this pretty brief. I found out around 2 o'clock today that most of our problems have been resolved, with the thank of Mr.
Nunziato.
Yes. Okay, I just have a couple questions that I
Sure.
would want to bring to your attention. Okay, first, we're talking about Block 177, Lot 96. I don't know if you'd like to see any photos. I brought 2 photos. One just to show you.
Please.
One just to show you of where the lane is, and this is the one circled that we're talking about. The long line is the lane that we're talking about.
Okay.
These are the trees that have been removed on Mrs. Hoden's property, and this is the trees that have been removed on my property. Again, that issue has been resolved. We've come to an agreement. A couple issues that I do want to also bring up. First of all, we'd like your word tonight, if you could, that no other trees will have to die in order to complete this project. More than 75 trees has already been destroyed. I would like to point out that we were promised prior to the variance approval that none of the trees that border our property would have to be removed. Second, we would like to know that if digging down that lane, which will begin, if they destroy any existing roots and destroy any trees in the process of that, whose responsibility will it be if they die as a result of that? Third, we ask the council now to order monies be put aside in escrow for a period of 3 years if possible, in the event that any of the trees that they agreed to plant, which they are going to, don't thrive. Lastly, we'd like the council to keep a close eye on this project. In the short time that it's been started, Mr. Panic and Mr. Bizen were called to our property 3 times, as well as the police department. We need someone to watch over us
Mhm.
as citizens,
Absolutely.
okay? Larger equipment are due to arrive very soon, and we would like your word that nothing else will be disrupted, and that these workers, not so much as the owners, because they're not there, the workers they hire to respect our property,
Mhm.
okay? And lastly, I'd like to applaud the efforts of Mr. Panic and Mr. Bizen, because without their help, things would have truly gotten out of control. And I thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure
Please
this is-
stay right where you're at. Mr. Panic, if you don't mind, we happen to have the benefit of our tree expert is here. Would you mind coming up, Mr. Panic? As you're approaching, Mr. Nunziato, I know your office has looked into this. What can we do relative to Ms. Lukowski's request about monies being put in abeyance for these trees, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, typically, Mr. Panic, what has happened is, just as a little bit of background, there's about a 900-foot or so long driveway, 10, 15 feet in width, that accesses the property. The applicant has to run the electric line, the water line, and probably phone cable, that all underground in that same driveway. And the concern, of course, is that there's 30, 40-foot tall trees and the root system and all, when they trench, that they may disturb, and actually have disturbed 75-plus trees. that, of course, were not part of the original disturbance. And again, Mr. Panic and his expert field visits and recommendations, he has created a replanting plan, which the applicant has agreed to, and we will hold him to that. As far as a maintenance guarantee of sorts, typically they will install the trees upon stabilization of that property, and then they'll construct their house, and we will have a maintenance guarantee of sorts, say for 2
Okay,
years.
so we will have
So that will happen.
Okay. Mr. Panic, do you want to add anything? And we appreciate your always being as accessible as you are.
Well, we did have quite a few problems at that particular piece of property. Fortunately, between Mrs. Lukowski and Marta and the new owner, Mr. Vargo, as late as today, he called me and said, in the spirit of trying to be a good neighbor, that he was going to make some relief on another additional piece of property, which, in all fairness, where he's going to be taking out those trees is an easement. It's a utility easement, and I checked all the legalities and all the proper protocol. They can, in fact, take whatever they want out of there and not do any restitution other than fixing up the grade and such. But he is going to go go the extra mile, and I have set up a mitigation plan. He has agreed to come up with the monies to buy the trees. I'm going to work with him on those trees, and he's going to provide the machinery to pull the stumps, to fill the ruts, fix the soil, and I think right now on paper it looks good, and I
Okay.
think pretty much
You're going to stay on top of this?
we're going to stay on top of it. My only concern is, just as they've pointed out, the additional ditch that's going to be dug. We want to get proper notice as to when that ditch is going to go and where it's going to go, because if it gets too close to the tree roots,
All
we
right.
are going to have some problems.
Can
yeah.
we ask Ms. Annunziato, can we send an official letter to this developer, what have you, insisting that they give us 72 hours notice prior to them going anywhere near this ditch, so that we can be there with Mr. Panic and whomever we need to supervise what they do?
Yes, that's not unreasonable. We can request that, sure.
All right, so will you make that happen, please?
Yes.
Will you copy us on that letter? Okay.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Ms. Lukowski? Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Mr. Panic. Okay, next is Marie Calderon. Ms. Calderon, welcome. Come on up. I know that Mr. Maggot is here with you. You're both welcome to come together if you like. It's completely up to you.
I'll go separately after Marie.
You got it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Newcomb, we're going to need you to respond to Mrs. Calderon's questions. Good evening, Mrs. Calderon.
Hi.
As
Marie-
always, your name and address for the record.
Excuse me 1 second.
Marie
Sit-
Calderon, 45
Why don't
Mariners
you come on up,
Cove,
Joe?
Freehold, New Jersey. Howell, but I have a Freehold address.
Welcome.
Hi.
In anticipation of your questions, we asked the township planner, Mr. Charles Newcomb, to be here tonight and to respond to some of your questions regarding the buffer ordinance and some of the suggested discussions. So take it away.
I went to the engineering meeting, which I
Planning
confronted-
board.
Planning board.
Yes.
And I confronted you with this because I was very upset with this. First of all, because it was done on a holiday and nothing was publicly posted about this even being brought into. Then I tried to find out who initiated it.
Can you read into the record just what that says so people out there know what you're talking about?
Howell cast eye on buffer.
Yeah, the summary on this, Ms. Calderon came to the planning board. She has concerns about a ordinance modification that was in front of the council. It was advertised, what have you, about changes to the buffer ordinance as it existed. And Mrs. Calderon was kind enough, along with Mr. Maggot, to come to the planning board to read into the record their concerns. At the time, the planning board chairman had recommended that those items would be more appropriately addressed in this forum, and that it was an ordinance that was being talked about by the governing body. And Ms. Calderon has some very legitimate concerns and questions, and so that's, for everyone's benefit, that's some of the background.
My concerns were that it wasn't posted anywhere and no one was notified of this.
Can you, Ms. Wallman, I don't know if you recall which ordinance, it was on the December
6th
meeting.
And the 20th, yeah.
Do you know, relative to that, that was not advertised?
That was not introduced,
I went to the Asbury Park Press and I got into.
took no action.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Well, it was tabled because of a gentleman named Mr. Smith. Yes.
we had taken it off the agenda, so there was no action. Okay, so that's why it wasn't. Okay, go ahead.
Mayor,
Well,
is that about
it
the
was
riparian buffers?
actually,
Yes, it is.
We spoke about that?
We did.
Please.
actually though, on the 20th, it was going to be put in as an ordinance, wasn't it? If I have the correct paperwork on that, so
Yeah,
that
that's
you're,
right.
you are all incorrect, yeah.
Okay, in all
I
fairness,
think, yeah.
not having
So-
any record in front of
To me,
Okay.
this looks like,
It was pulled
I don't
back.
even know how to phrase it, but it just looks
We
like it was
understand.
trying to be pushed through during a holiday time dishonestly. But-
And I can assure you that that certainly isn't the case.
Okay.
All these meetings are
And-
open and public and held accordingly.
My concern is, I'm not knowledgeable, but I'm learning, I'm going to classes, I'm getting your documents on riparian buffer zones, I'm getting the states, I'm in contact with the Environmental Protection Agency. What I don't know, I will know.
Good.
Now, my concern is I have been talking to you on Moore's Landing, all the development going behind there. It's the Environmental Protection Agency is still holding it because they're baffled too. They think it's going to be a problem. Now, we discussed this with you, and in one of the applications that was sent to you, right in here says, and this was going back, I think, September 23rd. They want to build basins on Howell Township property, which that body of water that's back there is not a C1. It should be a C1, but it's not. But Longbrook, the Dubay, Medicon all go in together back there. That's a problem back there. That, as it is now, it runs off onto Route 9. You know where they built the 7-Eleven there? Okay. You have a problem now with that. That's going to affect a lot of Howell residents down the line. And I feel that you're not putting enough concern into it. Now, on the 23rd, an application was put in with you, which they asked for your recommendations. Transition area waive, the buffer. They wanted to change the buffer.
Was
Now-
that sent to the council or the planning board? I think it was sent to the planning
Now,
board.
my concern was after you getting an application like this and then something like this trying to be changed at that time, right after that, it doesn't seem right. Now, I don't know how things work. I don't know about politics. I don't care, but I think this doesn't look proper.
Well,
And my concern is, I'm dealing with the Environmental Protection Agency. Everything's on record with them. Everything's done fair. They're looking into it. But I think, your
could
statement.
you hold on one second, Ms. Cauldron? Mr. Meyer or someone, would you please close that back door?
your
Thank you, Mrs. Schlegel. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm
I'm sorry.
new to this, so I don't accuse anybody of anything. And your statement, I hope you hold to it, that you will help and look at things fairly. Because I don't think that the engineers are doing a good enough job into going and researching this area and seeing the potential problems that they can cause. This will back up into villages over Route 9. We have flooding on those areas now. And I think that this is, not only is there one builder, which goes on to Burgerfield, which is Jackson Mill, you have two builders. And I'm trying to get a connection between both of them, that they're in cahoots. I'm working on that. I have people that I do know in Freehold Township. But I think that you really have to look into this. It's not just going to affect Moore's Landing. It's going to affect Route 9. It's going to affect people all up the line. Longbrook, that other development, it's going to affect a lot of people.
All right, Mr. Newcomb, maybe you can very briefly discuss the reason why there were suggested targeted changes to that ordinance for Ms. Cauldron's benefit and everyone else.
Okay. First of all, I think the council needs or has to have the understanding that the reason for the riparian buffer ordinance and the work of the state in terms of Category 1 waters is water quality. It's not so much quantity as it is basically the buffer, basically the ground acting as a filter, so to speak, before water non-point sources of pollution basically reach the stream. The stormwater management rules, all right, when they were adopted, they allowed for, in the area of Category 1 waters, allowed for a municipality or a regional agency, say the county and a group of municipalities, to do what is known as a special water resources protection plan for a certain area of land, where in essence the buffers on Category 1 waters could be reduced as much as 150 feet. If you consult with DEP, they will tell you in any of the waivers that they have granted, the most important is not so much what they call the outer layer, all right, which is the first 150 feet, but it is that 150 feet that basically that pretty much touches the top of bank and perpendicularly moves towards whatever in essence is being proposed in terms of the site. With that type of understanding, we have a riparian buffer ordinance which measures differently than the way that the DEP does in terms of their special water resource buffer. The way DEP does it measures it from the top of bank. All right, ours measures it from the floodplain back. So in most cases, you can have a floodplain which is maybe 150 feet, and then all of a sudden our 300-foot kicks in. So in essence, on a person's individual's property, his buffer could be at 450 feet, 600 feet, whatever. The idea, what I've been trying to basically, in my conversations, is that in essence we should have consistency with DEP. The way that the state agency, this being a Dillon Rule state, the state agency in essence has the ultimate control, and that in essence our way that we measure in terms of our riparian buffer should be the same. Conversely, we have an issue where we have a lot of properties, a lot of small properties, especially in areas where we want to foster development, primarily areas like Route 33, Route 9, things of that nature. And what happens is when you apply our riparian buffer ordinance, all right, to the edge of floodplain, all right, you literally wipe out property. In essence, what you do is you deem them totally unusable. Well, my suggestion was to follow the state's model, all right, which kind of allows for a tiered system based on the areas of zoning, in essence, where we would, in essence, establish the buffer. What I was saying was in Category 1 waters, it would still be 300 foot from the top of bank, all right, the way the DEP measures. In our ARE zones, it would still be 300 foot from the top of bank, consistency again with DEP. And then in the other zones, all right, where we in essence are fostering development, it in essence would be 75 foot, all right, but at the same time, all right, you would have to implement best management practices that would be identified by the engineering department to mitigate the issues of water. Because of the reduction of buffer, you would in essence have to do other mitigation measures, all right, to offset the reduction in buffer ordinance. Now, the thing that I did also in that model ordinance, and this is a DEP model ordinance that I kind of mimicked, in terms of my recommendations.
Do you have the number?
The model ordinance?
Number?
It's on the website.
It's on
DEP's website.
It's on the DEP website, okay.
Right. It's basically not only been done by DEP, but it was done by the Pacific River Coalition. They, in essence, worked with DEP in terms of developing this model. One of the things that we've had an issue with at the planning board is what is a stream, all right, and what is a ditch, all right, that somebody dug. All right, so what in essence this ordinance does, all right, the model ordinance does, it requires the township engineer to develop a map that in essence would be adopted by council and maintained by the engineer, all right, in terms of identifying what streams in essence are, streams, and in essence also where in essence the various buffers would apply. All right, and that at the time of the introduction, Bill and I had not gotten that far in terms of establishing that.
Let me ask you a question. Is there a way we can do all the great things you just said and still help Ms. Calderon in her issue?
Actually, ours are more stringent than.
Yeah, I mean, the issue, where we were in December, all right, with the Environmental Commission was, we had basically said to the Environmental Commission, we would allow them to look at the best management practices, identify the best management practices, all right, that you felt they needed to be utilized by the township in terms of these areas where we would have the reduced buffers. At the same time, I think it should be known that the council passed a resolution, all right, endorsing the Manasquan River Coalition, all right, to designate the Manasquan, the upper reaches of the Manasquan, as a C1 waterway.
Which
so,
we have.
you know, so that, you know, that
Not now. We're endorsing
resolution
that it be considered.
has been forwarded to DEP, and of course, with the transition
All right.
in state government, it'll probably take a while before
Can
any
we,
actions
I
take
know that we're
place.
not prepared to take action on this ordinance. It is back with you for draft.
And Mr. Nunziato.
And Mr.
the-
Nunziato.
And the Environmental Commission.
And the Environmental Commission, which reorganizes, I think, this Friday. I don't know that they're going to address it. Do you know when they're slated to talk about it?
I thought that they had a meeting last Friday, and my understanding was that they were going to talk about it, but I don't know.
It was Friday. You know what? I apologize. They did meet. It was Friday the 13th. I think we have the chairman of the Environmental Commission here, Mr. Jeff Pritchard. It was last Friday?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Was this talked about, Mr. Pritchard, if you don't mind me asking?
Bring it to the mic.
Why don't you come forward just very, very briefly, Mr. Pritchard? I apologize. It's good to have you with us.
While you're waiting for him, if I could just give you a
Bill, let
quick-
him use your mic since we have two other.
As a follow-up to the concerns that Mr. Smith had back in December, and again, I had spoken to you in my office about the article.
And you said it was wrong. It was a mistake.
Mr. Newcomb had done a draft of this DEP model, okay? And Mr. Newcomb and I actually were going to discuss it after one of the last council meetings in December. I happened to mention to Mr. Smith that we were going to meet, and he was kind enough to join us, as was Bobby Subowers of Environmental Commission. So the four of us sat down for about 2 hours. We walked through the model and some of Chuck's concerns, my concerns, the Environmental Commission's concerns. And the bottom line is really, well, the map was a big question. This map that's referenced in the ordinance that we never saw before. And actually, at this point, there are 3 maps. One is the stream map, the Howell Township 1978 version the Environmental Commission
Your
uses.
maps are very old. That's an inconsistency.
One of the
right
maps
there.
is the state map that the state uses, and the third, of course, is the Monmouth County GIS map. So we're actually going to make a hybrid of all 3 maps, which in fact will be the map we use to delineate the ditches and the streams, as Mr. Newcomb has indicated. At that point, that's where we are right now with this
Hold on
map.
1 second, Mr. Nunziato. I ask for the indulgence of the public. If you have a cellular phone, if you would just check it, it might be vibrating, what have you, or sound system at times is set off by that. So please check your cell phones. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Nunziato.
So the map is in my department's working on that right now.
Okay.
And the best management practices, as Mr. Newcomb had indicated, would typically be in the, let's call it the more commercial areas where we're looking to reduce the buffer so that the property now becomes more usable. And the best management practices we would have internally, either environmental or us, we would tell them what type of policies we'd want them to use so that the buffers could be reduced.
All right.
And-
Mr. Pritchard, would you come up just very briefly? Maybe you can tell us when the Environmental Commission might be talking about this issue again so that we could make certain Ms. Calderon, Mr. Magid, and others will know, and I'm sure Mr. Newcomb will be there, and we can get this all worked out. Good evening.
Good evening. We did reorganize last Friday, and this was brought to our attention. Basically, we were asked to come up with best management practices in case of a reduced buffer situation. Our goals were in with the mapping issues that Mr. Nunziato was talking about. But besides that, that is really all we brought to the table. I mean,
Okay.
we just kind of introduced it on that, so we do plan on trying to discuss this a bit
Terrific.
more at our next meeting.
When is your next meeting?
It's 2 weeks from the 13th, so.
Okay.
Maybe.
What was that, the 27th?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did want to discuss it
Terrific.
prior to that with some of the bodies
Okay.
that are involved. I think that we've also had meetings with Mr. Magid in the Environmental Commission regarding Moore's Landing and the issues there. And I think you do have a plethora of issues when it comes to all these cases. One being the C1 designation, which we, of course, and my great commissioners have told me a lot of history regarding Moore's Landing. We've seeked C1 status for this section before. It is true that this is, basically for water quality and not as much for quantity, but the two play into each other. So we've always, we also know that from the past that the Army Corps of Engineers has been involved with repairs and stuff with this area, which are also still involved with this issue.
And they said it shouldn't
Okay.
be touched.
And
Sure.
once again, with me, as everyone here knows, I have issue when our neighboring townships do things that impact us.
You've lived it yourself.
And it is, sort of my, thorn in my side. But once again, Freehold will be approving some plans that might impact our downstream
All right.
corridors.
No, the houses are going to be built in Freehold. The basins
Right.
and the
That's
crap
right.
is going to be built in
Could we do
Howell.
this? Mr. Newcomb, are you planning on being at this meeting on the 27th?
I just marked it down.
Will you be there? Okay.
The one thing, though, that I did want to discuss was, as far as Mr. Newcomb goes, is that although he's following a DEP ordinance, I do believe the township always has the ability to be more strict than the DEP ordinance. I mean, we could, we don't have to fall back to what the DEP is doing. And we do have the existing ordinance, we do have waiver procedures that allow for certain properties that are impacted by this.
Okay.
That maybe we could just amend those waiver procedures to, if we're having too much of a taking, rather than to
See, that-
introduce a whole new ordinance.
All right,
That's
well-
my thing. Why change it?
Okay.
Why now? And
I just
according
want-
to your things, it's not, you're not doing it for homeowners. Homeowners are protected. They can do things with, except I think this is basically for builders, for people that want to build.
Well, it certainly isn't for people who want to build houses. I mean,
Well,
I think as
I
Mr.
don't
Newcomb talked about, there's some commercial properties, and his suggestion on Route 9, that front 9, that become null and void because of this. Why don't we do this?
but-
You're meeting on the 27th. Mr. Newcomb is going to be there. Hopefully you and Mr. Magid can be there. There's going to be no rush to judgment. We're going to be interested in getting your feedback, work out the details. Everything has to get examined. Come back to us. Mr. Chairman, you and the commissioners, when you're comfortable, make your presentation to us after you've listened to everyone on this particular matter, and then we will deliberate from there after everyone has taken a look at it. Fair enough?
Yeah. One quick question, I think that for Mrs. Calderon. I think because I sense that you have a discomfort in that you feel that Howell Township is not being represented in this plan for Freehold on our end.
Do you want me to be honest? Yes.
Yes, I do.
mean, I think, like I said, actually, I was away for the holidays, and I got this from somebody that works in Freehold
no, no.
Township and said,
But
your own
but see,
township
you're
is screwing you. And I said, what?
No,
I
you're
got this
losing
email.
you're losing sight of your purpose here. And I truly don't think that
think
you
so.
understand the buffer ordinance, because what's going to change is not going to affect what your concern is. But I think
But
what your
you're-
concern is that you truly don't feel that the town is being represented in the planning of this development.
I
on our
did
side.
originally, until
Okay.
this happened. I was giving the mayor and everybody the benefit of the doubt. But
Well,
then when I
first of
got
all,
this,
first of all, understand that that plan does not become before the council, that if there's anything that has to do with the plan, that goes before the planning board. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gannon, because all we do is institute policy, so that you understand that. You keep
That's
saying
correct.
this board,
And the
this
other thing,
plan.
I had some conversation with Mr. Nunziato, that article, I believe, is inaccurate. Is that right? The article is factually inaccurate. I'm sure it was a mistake, but the article was factually inaccurate, and none of us were ever even contacted to comment on it. Mr. Newcomb, you ought to add
This project could be more under the control of council. That's all right. Then
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, Chairman.
First of all, it's not a subdivision of ground of any sort in the township, so it not necessarily has to come to the planning board. In essence, it could go to the township engineer, and in essence, who is responsible and reports back to the council.
So that's what-
Which
okay.
would be a more effective way
All right.
of probably dealing with it.
All right, so the two
you know.
takeaways here, just in summary, are there's going to be a meeting on the 27th. We hope that you'll be able to be there, Mr. Magid and anyone else. We know that our planner will be there. The Environmental Commission is going to look at it. I know they have a public portion. We want to get this right. The second thing is, can you prepare a memorandum to the manager outlining what you just suggested about how we can take control of this issue so that we can all have a better say, so we don't have another hidden view issue on our hands where some other community wound up leaving us holding the bag. Fair enough?
Do you feel better?
and will
Ms.
this change? Will this
You know, and I'd like to say something. You know, that night, I made the motion to rescind the motion. And it was really watching the citizens give information to us up here, and then government was working. I mean, Don Smith brought some things to our attention. We discussed them in depth, and we took it off the table at that time. I mean, no decision had to be made. I wanted more information from Mr. Newcomb, who I just finally met this evening. I believe Mr. Nunziata was here that night. And, I mean, you know, it came before us. Had to talk about it. And, you know, I hope the new chairman of the Environmental Commission, you know, that they do the same job. They bring things to our attention. And I'm not going to tell you I know everything there is to know about riparian buffers. I know a lot more now than I did before. But I don't know everything about them. A lot of things I don't know everything about. I hope you find out everything there is about them and come before us every time there's an issue with
Rutgers
them.
has a great department. They're always willing to answer your
Thank you
questions.
very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Calderon.
Okay, thank you. I'll be watching,
also-
and I'll be here.
Am I?
Mr. Licata, I know you want to talk about Wawa.
Actually, no.
You don't?
I do, but actually it became apparent.
Use the.
You got to come up and
mic.
use the mic.
Use the mic.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr.
That's all right.
Council. Peter Licata of Sonnenblick Parker and Selvers. As Ms. Calderon was speaking of this application out on Burgerville Road, the more I heard about it, it became apparent to me that this is in fact an application that our office is handling.
Oh, you're the one. All right, lock the doors, folks.
Now you must really get close to the mic.
And I just wanted to state that for the record and also say that I would invite Ms. Calderon, if she would give me contact information. I can arrange a meeting with the applicant, who himself is an engineer, and who oh, you have contacted Mr. Schenkel?
I sit in the back at your meetings with Greenville Township.
Okay.
Get any insight I can.
Great, because I understand he's going to be putting together a meeting with, informational meeting for the residents in the Moores
Good.
Landing development. And we're obviously willing to sit down and listen to people's concerns and explain to them what it is we're trying to achieve.
Maybe you can leave your card with Ms. Calderon.
Certainly, I'll give her my
Okay.
contact info.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Licata.
Yes, I am.
All right, why don't you guys, all right, hold on.
Looks like we
Hold
have a
on.
lot to talk about.
Why don't you, all right, hold on.
Hold on.
Ms. Calderon, you're
Yeah,
welcome
yeah.
to, if you want to have a conversation out in the hallway. I think there is a member of the police department out there. I'm teasing you. You're fine, okay. Mr. Magid, I'm going to ask you to come up. If there's anything that has not already been talked about on this issue, we'd like to hear it from you. So come on up.
It will be in my own specific manner.
Please come forward.
I'm not here to talk about Disney World. I'm here to talk about something to keep us from drowning in our area.
All right, before you start commenting, just make sure we get it on the microphone.
I will lower my voice because I just had a gallbladder taken out last week, a couple other little things. The big rocket Gibraltar is still in my wild dog. They'll be in the hospital.
Well, take your time and get yourself comfortable and pull the microphone.
If I'm in the hospital, change it? No, I don't think so. Okay, that's
Just please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Abraham Magid, and I reside at 89 Mariners Cove in Howell Township with a different postal address. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Now, I've heard a lot of language. What I want to do is, I'll say things like in a sentence or two. I want that response to remain succinct to my point in a sentence or two. And we'll have a quid pro quo in order to find out where we're at. I'm holding up here, it's some distance, the map of Howell Township of our waterways. I got this from the office. I spoke with Tom Savino, and he spent a great deal of time, to his great credit, thumbing through exactly what the DEP at this time classifies as a C1 waterway. I would like you to know that whether Mr. Smith objected, and so maybe you did proceed in December. You're a little busy, so I'll wait.
We're listening.
No, that doesn't work. When somebody's writing, their ears aren't
We're
working.
taking
that way.
notes.
Huh?
We're taking notes.
Yeah, but you're leaning over to him. Take your notes in your area, he'll take his notes in his area. Right? Okay.
Mr. Magid, go ahead, please.
All right. I think a little buzz was going on. Here we go. You, Mayor, the Mayor said, this is for the benefit of some possible commercial properties on Route 9, which are not classified as C1. How could you dare to proceed considering that in December, when in fact, this Manasquan River, and certainly Longbrook running to it, and all kinds of others that feed into the Manasquan River, Birch Creek, Timms, Prose, Hardin, and so on. Nothing is in C1. It was very precipitous of you at that time.
Well, there's 5 of us, and this is not run as a one-person rule. So, in answer, let me answer your question. You said you were going to make some questions.
All right.
And you wanted
well,
answers.
My question to you, as the mayor.
Yes.
You said this is in the paper, Tri-Town News.
The Tri-Town News.
It's a newspaper. It's reliable enough.
I just didn't know what paper you were commenting on.
Okay. Well, can you deny that these were your comments? That Mayor Joseph DeBello said the law was developed by Township planner Charles Newcomb
Correct.
in order to grant relief to homeowners. And I won't, with side yard buffer zones and so on. Okay, that was one thing. Then you went even further. At that meeting, DeBello, who sits on the board, Councilman Peter Tabasco, said he was concerned about Howell's existing riparian ordinances may have only achieved a level of over-regulations. Over-regulations. We're not C1. We could be killed by that. And then later on, in your conjunction with our new Charles Newcomb, Township planner, and when I was at the meeting last time, I guess at the planning board, you were very, very erudite in stating to me that this would not affect C1s.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you know at the time that the very thing we're so concerned about, this is my question to you.
Yes, sir.
Did you know that was not C1 as it was so quickly revealed to me within minutes by Tom Savino? Not what we're proposing for the future in the DP, but right now, that's not a C1.
You know that.
Why
We
did you
do know
proceed
that.
to do that? And did you know it was not a C1?
2 things. We have passed a resolution begging that waterway be C1. And the second issue is that we need tax revenue. We need tax relief. We have large portions on Route 9, stop me if I'm wrong, Mr. Newcomb, Mr. Nunziato, that you gentlemen have attested to us that if we did not examine alternatives, those properties would be rendered useless. Let me finish.
Okay.
As a function of their being deemed useless, they cannot bring revenue. If they don't bring revenue, there isn't tax relief. If there isn't tax relief, we have a problem. So we looked at this from a business perspective, hoping to have a dialogue around the right way to proceed on this issue.
Okay.
There is no, let me
Let him
finish.
finish.
Okay. All right. Of course, I've heard it so before.
And I know you've heard this before, and I don't know what that article particularly says. So that is why it was presented to us by our professional to find alternatives to dealing with certain properties that could be deemed completely useless because of some of the regulations we had on the books. And the fact that they needed to be examined to determine how they could be altered in a way that would still protect our residents and simultaneously allow us to encourage business in those provisions, in those areas of our township that we want to have viable commercial and business entities to bring in ratables to our municipality to provide tax relief to our residents. And so that is why Mr. Newcomb was directed by the entire municipality, the entire governing body, to examine these alternatives and bring it back to our attention, which is what we're in the process of doing.
I thank you for those comments. And I looked down Route 9, and I saw a very few number of waterways, because when you go further south, they quickly become C1. But I get back to my original question to you. Before you did anything up here,
We haven't done anything up here, Mr. Mayor.
no, before you even raised it as a discussionary thing for the town council or the planning board. And I don't care that you now have a request to the DP to have a C1. You don't have it, bird in the hand, not two in the bush. It very much sounds to me that if with the tiniest misstep And you know how lawyers are with developers, and if you do something, boom, they got you in the courts. You took a very serious step by bringing this so out even momentarily in the open in December, when you should have known. And certainly Mr. Newcomb.
I have to interject, Dave, just for a second.
Go ahead, Mr.
What are
Nebraska.
you trying? Are you trying to say that we are at fault for some developer trying to take a property?
No way.
So
You
what do you say?
misinterpreted me again. Let me restate what I'm
Well,
saying.
get to the point. You
No,
said
no,
to be
please.
succinct.
I
Get
don't
to the
like
point.
this. Get to the point.
You've been
I
up there.
have a number
it's
of
now
items.
9:50. You've been up
I
for
know
10
that.
minutes.
You were
Get
in there an hour and a half or an hour and three-quarters.
Get to the point.
Okay, I understand that. There's no pushing here.
Get to the point. There is.
There's several points here, and I'll get to each one in turn. Not because you tell me get to the point.
This is a privilege, not a right that you have.
I
You're testing us right now.
feel this privilege should be allowed.
All right, hold on.
He just accused us of not having good integrity.
No, I
I'm not
didn't say
yes,
that.
You did.
No, I
Get
didn't.
to the point.
No, I didn't, Mr.
What's your
Tabasco.
gallbladder, sir?
Mr. Mag.
What's
At
your
no
gallbladder?
point did I use the word poor integrity.
Don't challenge me. Get
I
to the
don't
point.
care to challenge.
Get to the question.
Well, let me talk. If you talk,
You
I
are
can't
talking.
talk.
Get
no,
to
you're
the
talking.
point.
You're
Mr.
talking.
Mr. Magid, hold on.
Okay.
Time
If
out.
you don't talk.
We're going to take a 5-second time out. Everybody be quiet. Collect your thoughts. Please. Summarize what it is, what point you'd like to bring out. How can we help you, and what are your concerns?
I said there were several points. Several. One, where you don't simply go more or less blindfolded on a thing that's not C1, that we could all drown nicely from the Manasquan River, Longbrook.
All right.
Right?
I got to step
Yeah.
away.
Yep. Go.
It's okay, Mr. Tabasco.
I don't care.
Mr. Magid, proceed.
Well, let me proceed. Hotheads don't work with me.
No, he's not a
I know.
hot. Proceed.
That's all right.
Be
Tell them to
nice.
calm down.
Proceed.
I'm lovely. Ask my wife. All my
Be
6 children and
nice.
14 grandchildren. And that's all the hospital attendants that took care of me. Yes. I will reiterate. Not a question of integrity. Where does he find that foul language?
All right.
What I'm saying, no.
Go
You
ahead.
should never have done it. Now, you did it, and that's the horse is out of the stable. Wait a minute. You did bring it up. You can't turn the clock back. Now, Charles Newcomb wants to aid what you call tax revenue. Wouldn't it be nice to consider that with a misstep where you have tax revenue on Route 9, which you and I are going to sit down, I'll show you what Route 9 is like with Brooks and with Mr. Newcomb. We'll be together if I don't have a hospital visit that breaks into it. I intend to sit down with you, Mr. Mayor, with you, Mr. Newcomb, the planner, and this is not now. I want a commitment. Until we sit down quietly, you want to call it environmental, this cannot be raised again at any township or even planning board meeting, and I want to tell you why.
No, I have to stop you right now, because we're going to move off this point, because we've got some other people.
Oh, I
We
have other
appreciate
points.
your concerns. No,
I have
I'm going to ask you to, we're going
No,
to
there's a
stop on this
vital
point.
point after this.
Hold
It
on.
has nothing to do with it.
We've already made a commitment, as you were here, that the Environmental Commission is going to have a meeting on the 27th. Mr. Newcomb will be there. There'll be a discussion. The chairman has agreed it'll be on the agenda.
Will you be there?
No, I'm not on. I'm not going to be at the Environmental Commission on the 27th. No,
Well,
I will
wait
not
a
be
minute.
able to be there.
No, I understand something. Doesn't the final responsibility, you can
All
take
right,
his
let me finish.
recommendations.
Time out.
Okay.
We're going to cut to the chase, with all candid respect.
Oh, yeah.
I have great faith and judgment in our environmental commissioners. They will report back to this governing body in terms of their collective recommendations and judgment. I don't need to be there. We delegate to them in their management capacities to make certain decisions and bring it back to us. After they have vetted out that process, it'll be brought back to the 5 of us, and we will review those decisions in open public session. No decision is going to be made, nor will there be a rush to judgment until the environmental commissioners and our professionals, with your input and that of the public, participate in that review. Post the 27th, it will come back here, and we will again look at it and make a collective decision on the outcome. That's how it's going to go. So nothing is being done. There is no rush to judgment. And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to make any final comments, because we do have...
No, I don't need comments on this. I'll see you at that meeting or him at the meeting.
Good.
Go from there. Now, another thing. I tried 3 times today to talk to Barbara Capitan on a very important thing. The important thing is that Mr. Steger is no longer the engineer, but I met and spoke with Glenn Valesi, and he's top of the line. Manalapan loves him. He's great. It turns out,
Go ahead.
it turns out that she refused to come to the phone, each time sending Sue saying, I have nothing to tell you. The simple fact is that we received a letter from Mr. Sonnenbluck for what's called conception, and the response to that showed almost no engineering at all from the engineer Steger. It said, yeah, it's whatever it is, 10,000 square feet. Nothing about the storm detention basin. So I said, how do I go about, now I'm talking to you, not to her, how do we go about immediately getting, because she said I have no power over them. I'm talking about Barbara Capitan. So I won't be dealing with her, I'll be dealing with you. How do we get Mr. Valenci immediately to, as a minimum, do a detailed study of that stormwater detention basin, which is right contiguous to wetland? I want to know all about it, its depth, not just the fact that it's 10,000.
I understand your question. Mr. Newcomb, would you give us the benefit of your thoughts on that? What's going to have to happen
Well-
here? Isn't Valesi going to have to do that anyway?
Well, if it basically comes to the planning board, but I guess my concern is that what I heard earlier was that maybe the township committee or council was more, wanted to be more or less involved as the focal point. There's no subdivision of ground in Howell Township in terms of this project, but my recommendation would be is to basically have it submitted to the township engineer, have the engineering department do the review, and in essence, they are responsible to the council.
All right. Can you please, tomorrow, reach out to Mrs. Capitan, describe what she just directed to you so that it gets to you in your role as the planner, and you review it with the township engineer so that we can do exactly what Mr. Maggot is
Why?
asking.
He'll be directed to do it by somebody?
That's
Because
it.
Barbara Capitan said she can't. Who
No.
will direct him?
Time
No,
out.
the council will direct.
Council is directing because we want to take authority of this project, as
Oh.
we talked about earlier. So would you please call Mrs. Capitan, Mr. Nunziato, maybe you two guys can coordinate so that the plans come here and you're directed to do it if, in fact, we take control of the project, okay?
We're
You guys got that?
taking it away from Mr. Valenci's hand, it's going to go to Mr. Nunziato? Is that what's happening here? I want to know.
That's what's happening
Okay.
here.
Then I'm going to say, can I believe that this will happen too sweet? In other words, this will be studied by Mr. Nunziato within a very short time, like a week or so.
Clearly,
Is that
I'm not in a position to commit to the time frame. I
Well,
don't
it
know
could
that's
be-
a fair
it could be
question.
months, right?
I don't think it'll be months. I think let's get a look at it. Let's have Mr. Nunziato and Mr. Newcomb take a look at it. It'll be looked at as quickly as is humanly
When will
possible.
I be informed of the time frame? I want to know that.
I don't know that we're in a position to
But then who
answer
can I
that
call
question.
in town hall to find out?
Here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, Mr. Nunziato is going to talk with Mrs. Capitan. He's going to get an understanding of what's at stake. He's going to caucus with the township attorney and Mr. Newcomb about can we even take it to our control, which we would like to do, and they'll get a call back to you with an update as quickly as possible.
You are the letter that we received from Sonnenbluck where he's sort of inferring that Freehold Township would just like to throw us out. So it seems to me that we should take, not can we should take immediate control of this.
There is one sticky issue. It's called the law.
And why
And
is that
we need-
prevented?
Because we need to make certain that we have the authority to do what Mr. Newcomb is recommending. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we can take authority to do this.
Oh.
These two gentlemen are going to make certain they can get a look
One-
at the plans, and
one-
we will know immediately.
Fine.
That is
Okay.
as best we can
One
tell you
thing-
at this
Will
point.
I be in touch with Mr. Nunziato to find out the progress of that if I call his office, say, well, next week?
I suspect you will call his office, and I suspect he'll be pleased to give you an update.
I mean,
Okay? All right, we're
one
done.
thing-
We're moving on to
okay,
the next issue.
just
Thank you,
one-
Mr. Maggie.
One issue real quickly. I mean, they can't throw Howell Township out.
Okay, good.
Okay, I mean, that's,
Terrific.
I don't,
Okay. All right.
you said
next-
that Freehold would like just throw us out.
No.
Good, good. No, guys.
Take this offline. Take this
Well,
offline.
Go,
That's-
thank
you know.
Mr. Newcomb, thank you for staying. Mr. Maggot, thank you. The next person, Ms. Abramoff, if you are still here. Grace Abramoff. Good evening, Mrs. Abramoff. Welcome. Just please give us your name and address for the record officially.
Let me just say one thing.
Want you?
Yeah, talking to the mic.
Yes. Yes. Welcome, Mrs. Abramoff.
Thank you very much. Grace Abramoff, 26 Glenmore Road. I'm glad to see Mr. Walsh has seen the light
What
and
night?
know that things are different from this side to that side of the agenda. You said that now that you're on the other side of the
I
diet.
knew that before I got here, ma'am.
Pardon me?
I knew that before I
Okay,
got here.
Good, thank you. We read in today's Asbury Park Press that Jim Gary died. For all of you who are not familiar with Jim Gary, he was an exceptional artist in his own way. And he wasn't recognized too, well, I don't think
Excuse
he was
me, Mayor,
recognized.
can I hear?
Yeah, gentlemen, Mr.
Hey,
Magid, we need to pay respects to Ms. Abramoff's comments.
Yes.
Hold on one second, Ms. Abramoff.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am. I'm sorry.
And I just
Thank you.
don't think in the time that he's been in Howell that he was appreciated as much as he should have been. And I think he was an exceptional man in his own right. And I was just wondering if we could look into to see what's going to happen to his artwork. And because his house was surrounded by it, and it was exceptional artwork, stuff, things. If somehow that we might be able to procure, if we had some money, or if we had a benefactor who would like to take a piece and put it on township property, maybe by the library or in one of our parks as a memorial.
This is
to
the
him.
sculptor of like all the dinosaurs and stuff?
Yeah.
Grace, just so that you know, probably, oh gosh, it was before I was on town council, I had contacted him to see if he would be willing to donate something for because we were working on the children's garden. In fact, Zig, if you're still here, remember Zig, many years back, to see if he would like to donate a piece of his artwork for the children's garden that we had been working on, and he had declined at that time.
Yeah, I know that. He was, he wanted to be paid for his work, which I can understand it. That was,
No, that's what I just said. But I don't know that they would be willing to donate
can
something
we,
at this point.
through
Well,
our
I'm not even looking for it to be donated. I'm looking for a benefactor to buy it.
Can we, through the township manager's office, contact his estate to find out what plans they may have for the work?
For any of that artwork.
And to determine if something could be done with the town?
I mean, there are a lot of organizations in Howell, maybe through the Chamber of Commerce, through the Optimist, through some way that there could be some memorial to him in this town.
It's a great idea.
And benefit us also with it. There's one by the diner, that still stands. It might not even need to be a big piece of work, but just something to remember him by. If you could do that, I would appreciate it in his memory. I didn't know him well. I only met him a couple of times, but I just think that it would be significant to do that. And one thing I have to say, another thing, Joe, you're a great communicator, but there is something to the 3-minute rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Habermoff. Okay. Next is Stanley Merciniak.
Well said, Grace.
He's only...
Oof.
Okay.
I did give him a lot of tools in my younger days.
All right. Mr. Merciniak,
Yes,
welcome.
sir.
Please give
Welcome.
us your name and address for the record and tell us what you'd like to talk about.
Stanley Marciniak, Jerseyville.
Okay. That's in Howell.
Huh?
That's in Howell.
That's it. What I'm doing tonight, I'm going to try to make myself short.
Good.
Because I didn't get the agenda till 2:30 this afternoon. Okay?
Me
And for
too.
Huh? You too, right? And for me to get into this paperwork that I want to talk about, I'll be here till tomorrow morning. So I'd rather just ask, I had a meeting, we're going to meet with Mr. Nunziato.
You're a
on
popular
drainage.
guy tonight, Mr. Nunziato.
He's busy, but we were talking to get together on, which one here? On resurfacing 5 Points Road, on all the drainage that's crossing and all the mishmash. And the other one was, let me get over here, it's Zeminski's site review and so forth on that one, okay? So what I'm been discovering in a short time, Zeminski has a problem in reference to storm drains are in the street, and I find in the minutes, they stated that storm drains in the streets, Howell 5 Points must go to a detention basin, and it didn't go to a detention basin, so I'll leave it there. Okay, so you catch on. Because right now, I've got, let me just, I try to make this short and quick here, somebody else to speak. You got Crest Ridge, Mansions of Howell, Hickory Hills, Apple Ridge, Earl Ammunition Base,
90 what?
These are
Stanley?
all the bases that drain water into this area, okay? The Woods, the Zeminski's, Mannings, Nob Hill, Rasmussen's, Yachts, there's quite a Navasink. So actually, everything goes to the Navasink watershed, all right? What's happening here is we got to get together to straighten this basin out before you start paving the road. This is the last resort. Here was another picture on that so-called famous detention basin that don't work, all right? So what happened about 3 weeks ago, as she come out of the basin, she froze, and these guys were smashing each other up in ice. So this is what the problem is.
Go ahead, Mr. Nunziata.
Just to help Mr. Marciniak somewhat, 9 o'clock this morning, we sat in my conference room and went over the agenda and some of the concerns in North Howell, i.e. the Zeminski project and some of
Yeah.
the drainage and the overlayment of 5 Points. And we had indicated to Mr. Marciniak that we would address some of his concerns prior to the overlayment of 5 Points, which is probably going to happen when school ends in the end of June. So we have about 5 or 6 months to address
Okay,
these
good.
issues.
All right, okay,
Terrific.
that's fine.
Anything else,
get
Mr.
together
Marciniak?
We'll get together on it because, let me see on the back here. What we have, I have another map I discovered somewhere in the package, and we have 344 acres draining into that 24-inch culvert pipe on 5 Points Road. That's a lot of land to back up here. So this is why you have problems with water.
Okay.
Very
He's
bad.
gonna- You're going to look at
He's
it.
going to look at it.
And
Good.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's here.
Anything
Now,
else?
Yeah, at the same time, this was I'll turn it around this way real quick to show it to you, and I'll give you a copy later. This was minutes on drainage study meeting on Howell Road, all right? And
What year is that?
let me see if I can find it. Some more words somewhere. Anyway. It's here. I don't know.
78. Does this pertain to the same issue?
1995. Okay.
95. So what we had is, we had a meeting that was drawn up by the Environmental Committee, all right? So who was at the meeting was Harvey Morell as mayor, George Vecchi as township engineer, Jeff Nagel as ESP Associates, Barry Johnson as B&L Building Group, Ernie Peters as ESP Associates, Billy Robinson, Environmental Commission, Stanley, me, Bruce Davis, acting township clerk, manager. He was there at this meeting.
Okay.
This meeting was brought up to control the drainage on 5 Points Road.
And you let all this bad stuff
No.
happen?
Nope. The thing is, when I got up to speak, I was denied to speak. I was turned down.
Well, that explains
My
it.
rights, civil rights were denied when that was brought up. I'm bringing it up again.
Okay.
Because,
Does he have a copy of that, Mr.
no,
Nunziata?
I will give him one.
Terrific.
You
You
got
give
one
him a
of these?
copy.
You give me another one if I don't.
All right, I'll give you 3. What's the
This
hell?
is on the same issue, though, so you're going to already see him
All the
tomorrow.
same issue, yeah.
You're
get to the
saying
next
that this
issue.
study it speaks to the issues around the drainage problem near
Yeah.
5 Points Road. You'll give us a copy. Mr.
I'll give you a
Nunziata's already
copy.
indicated he's working
Yeah.
on it.
But the
Okay.
thing is, well, I named all the people that were there at the meeting, and it's very important, because you want to pave the road, and you have drainage problems galore that I know up
Well,
that
as
end.
Mr. Nunziata talked about, the road is not intended to be paved until June, and it's
Right.
January. So
Right.
he's working on addressing those drainage issues before it's going to get paved. Is that right?
There are some, there may be some potential deficiencies in some of the existing drainage. However, and I will say this, I came aboard not too long after that meeting was held, and back in the mid-90s, the Environmental Commission or the planning boards liked to approve projects where they would promote groundwater recharge. In other words, the basins would have a bottom, the pipes would be a foot or two above that, so it would detain the water. They would have channels that would encourage water to come into the ground. And that does affect a lot of the drainage in North Howell because the soils are not really good for recharge. But that was the policies that the boards were approving in those days, and now we're
Okay.
living with those ramifications.
All right,
Well-
so he's working on it, Mr.
All right,
Marciniak. We
just so I
appreciate
can
your
hook on to
comments.
that, I helped farm that land with Mr. Kavanaugh. That whole field is in drain tile. You know what
Okay.
drain tile is? So within 12 inches, you're in water. And now they put fill in for so-called turkey mounds. And the other day, I did have a nice smell at one of those.
All right.
st-
He's
All
going
right,
to
so I
work on
stopped.
it.
So
We
you got a
know you'll
problem coming.
continue to be involved.
You
All
know,
right?
it's coming now.
Good.
I'm
All right.
just telling you by smell.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'd like to get more paperwork. I'll give it to Bill.
Please.
Later on when I find it, but this is the latest one.
Okay. Please get them to him.
And If you're gonna pave the streets, boy, you're gonna need a hell of a lot of pipes, let me tell you that.
Well, he's talked about they're going to fix it before they pave it.
Well,
All right.
it's up to you. It's a shame, because if you let the water come out like this again, and those kooks that drive down that street, they don't know there's ice there. And next thing you know, they're gone. And that's gonna happen again.
All right,
Here's
thank you,
what's
Mr.
Here's
Messina.
what's happening now.
Okay.
All right? And Tony across the street, his problem is his mailbox gets loaded with water. The mailman delivers water by car, just splashes right into the mailbox. So he's doing good. So nothing's working in the proper way, all right? And I'll give you,
how the board let all those approvals go through at the
I'll
time
give you a
is
copy of
nothing
the
we can
drainage
answer.
on 5 points.
Okay.
That's the only
Thank
way I
you.
can
All right,
identify.
Mr. Warren Curry, you're up, sir. Welcome. Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
See
Messina.
you later.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Curry.
Good evening.
Your name and address for the record.
Warren
please.
Curry, Georgia Tavern Road. Mr. Walsh, I was encouraged by some of the things you said tonight. I'm glad you cleared the air because some people were suspecting you might have been a part of that recall thing. I didn't think you were that kind of a person, and I'm glad you cleared that up. And some of the other things you said about your willingness to work with the council and that you all had the betterment of Howell in your hearts. I was encouraged to hear that. But the naysayers and the malcontents are out again. They want to run for office. They don't have a plan for the township. They just want power. All through the master plan and planning board meetings, you were being accused of trying to do this, that, and the other thing while we were in the process of trying to gain information. And some things hadn't even been decided on, but you were being accused of, for instance, wanting to put in 130 some odd houses in different places, which is, I know, the furthest thing from your mind. There's a process we go through of getting information in our quest for wisdom, for the wisdom needed to make proper decisions as to what's best for the town. I think you guys are working on the proper process. You're taking the right roads to do that. Along the way, you get criticized all over the place because people have foregone conclusions that you're going to do this or that, and it's not in their best interests. This administration has almost accomplished all of their campaign promises, and they're working on the rest. Your record is one of the best. Now we hear the malcontents among us are asking for a recall of the best mayor this town has seen in a long, long time. Also, in most recent campaigns, it was said by the so-called independents that they had to put a stop to business as usual. I'd like to examine business as usual. Could you just address some of the accomplishments you've made since you've been up here?
I think you did.
Just a few. I know you have a litany of them, but a few of the great accomplishments you've accomplished. Just for the record.
I'll
Just
start
for
on
some of
one.
the people who may not know about this, maybe in the audience.
I'm gonna do
All
a
they hear
third-
is recall.
I'm going
and
to do a
negative.
third. I actually, in my deputy mayor's speech last week, you heard some. You heard Joe talk about others. I'm going to make one more comment because Joe did hand me the recall petition. And the names I see of the people that submitted this petition are the people that are behind the ads you see in the Howell Times right now calling us all pirates, etc. But I will
love that
say
one.
this. The one thing, and I'll bring it up again, that I hear accused of us at times is that we're so pro-development. In the 3 years that we have sat on this council, there's been about 500 COs for new homes. At the same time, this council last year did an unprecedented hearing, first in Howell's history, to take away 500 homes from a development that was given its granted of approval based on illegal campaign contributions given to the other political party in power, so to speak. That subtracted 500 homes. So if anything, we're at a wash for our 3 years. The 500, now forgetting that, setting that aside, the 500 homes over those 3 years is the slowest rate of new home growth over the last 20 years in Howell Township. And that happened while you had the greatest rate of growth in real estate history the last 3 years.
In the country.
In New Jersey, too.
Yeah.
So while all that growth was happening, and we had the slowest rate of growth for new homes in Howell, so I guess we're pro-development, right? And we had a wash getting rid of 500 versus the 500 new COs, so I guess we're pro-development.
I'm glad he's on my side.
All right, so I'll just give you that. That's one huge accomplishment, so we're not pro-development. Now, I'm looking at these three names. There's a farmer, there's somebody that was anti the eminent domain on it, and there's someone who talks about the oil crisis all the time on this. So we have a pro-development person, the farmer, who wants to keep zoning to 2 acres rather than 6, which was promoted in North Howell. We have an anti-development person on here who had the eminent domain argument, the Malsbury family.
What eminent domain?
On Route 33.
There is none.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So what I'm getting at is that there's conflicting points of the people who submitted this petition. So straight out, this petition has no purpose other than for political gain. If they were all on the same side on these issues, they wouldn't be together on this issue, except that they want to basically mar you. That's it.
Well, I thought business as usual was going pretty well in this administration. And I happen to be present when I've heard some of the accomplishments. And believe me, it was a long list of accomplishments, and you can't deny any of them.
I'm going to say one more thing, Warren. I'm really getting going on this now. Look,
I want to get you going.
He's a great mayor. Right? This is the heart that keeps his heart in check. This is the mind that keeps his mind in check. That's the soul that keeps his soul in check. And now we got somebody else who keeps us all in check. This is a great council. We have great debate. We've accomplished great things. I am really upset that this happened today. This is really bad for Howell. It's really bad for democracy. You want to take us out, do it at the polls in November. Don't mar the process.
Have any of the recallers come up with a plan on how to pay the bills that the last administration has left you? Such as some of the sweetheart contracts that you will now have to pay for without being allowed to do anything?
The recall petition does not state a reason why
of course not.
They are looking to recall.
In fact, it says exactly that. The committee chooses not to set forth a statement of reasons for the recall. Again, it's just to mar them.
I like to look at both sides of an issue. And I'm starting to feel like maybe this recall was a good thing. It might identify the malcontents, the naysayers, and the fools that are trying to destroy this administration, and perhaps they'll be exposed for what they really are. Some light may be shed on the grab for power just for the sake of power. It'll become apparent maybe to the good people of Howell that no more dedicated and effective council has ever sat up there. Keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kern.
I'm fiery now.
I know you are. Next person on the list is Beth Hine. Mrs. Hine, welcome. When you get up, just give us your name and address for the record. And there's
how many
three.
more
There's only 3 additional people. I know we're going to get through it quickly. Good evening, Mrs. Hine. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor DeBella and Council.
Let's give us your name and address.
Beth Hine, 9 Capitol Reef Road in Howell.
Welcome.
When I heard about the filing of the intent to recall you, I felt that I had to come and make a couple of comments.
Just pull a little closer to the mic so everybody can. There you go.
Microphones, okay. It pains me that there's people out there who don't have our best interests at heart. The people of Howell elected you by considerable margin, and as far as I'm concerned, they couldn't have chosen a better person.
Thank you.
Even though you, along with Juan, Peter, and Cynthia, have had to make some tough decisions that weren't always popular, I think you've done an overwhelmingly wonderful job, and I'm proud to have you as my mayor.
Thank you.
I think you're doing a wonderful job, as I said, and you have had and will always have my support, my family's support, and my friends' support. On another note, I know that you're on a list of potential candidates for the freeholder position that M. Hanlon has left open, and I want to let you know that as a Republican County Committee person, you have my vote, and if you do get appointed, I will vote for you again in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Mrs. Hine. I appreciate it. The next person, Jim Burgess. Welcome, Mr. Burgess. Come on up. As always, just please give us your name and address for the record. Good to see you.
No, it's like 10:30 and I haven't started.
Good evening. Jim Burgess, 153 Pine Needle Street, Howell, New Jersey.
Welcome, Mr. Burgess.
Welcome. First of all, I want to address Mr. Walsh. I think Councilman Walsh, you probably see me as one of your biggest critics. But I have to say that from the minute I heard about this recall, there was no doubt in my mind that you had anything to do with it, nor would you try to support it. Secondly, I think most of my comments will be directed to the Mayor DeBella because the recall is directed to him. But I have to say I feel this way about all the council people that sit up here today. I think this recall is ridiculous. Every citizen, I think, has a right, if they want, to file a petition for a recall, but I think this is abuse of the privilege. There is absolutely no reason for a recall because any resident disagrees with a particular issue that this council handles. I also disagree that this council runs business as usual. This council has never run business as usual. You have always been willing to step up to controversial subjects, address them, take action to correct them that you feel is in the best interest of the township. I've sat here meeting after meeting and seen residents, either individual or as a group, come up and address this council with a problem, and you've always come up with a resolution for them. Whether or not they liked your answer, you gave them an answer. You didn't try to push them off. You always got back to the people with the answer. I feel this recall, I don't believe it will happen because I don't think they'll get the support of the residents of Howell Township. I think the residents of Howell Township know that you're doing a good job, and if not, they will see you're doing a good job, and they'll see what's behind this recall petition. I feel that the people issuing this recall also know that. I just think it's an attempt that they want to try to discredit the mayor, tarnish his name. I think it's both a mixture of political and personal. I think it's driven by people that have a personal dislike for the mayor, has nothing to do with any of the political issues within the township. Quite a few of the residents, or I won't say quite a few of the residents, but the main object of a few dissident residents here is basically with senior development. Now, it's very nice to be able to sit back and take one viewpoint on senior development. But Mayor, I think you have a job to look at both aspects. You have to look at controlling the development, and you have to look at bringing in development that's going to bring in an increase in tax revenue and profit to the residents of this township. The residents want reduced taxes, and I think you have to look at issues and ways to reduce our tax spending. Even if we do not develop anything from today on, we will have a tax increase every year because the price of running a township does increase every year.
At a great rate.
I think a lot of the negative gets publicized. A lot of the positive is ignored. You people here have accomplished quite a bit in the past year. You're addressing issues, you're fixing problems that have been neglected for over the past 10 years, and it's going to cost money. Unfortunately, the roads have been neglected, the buildings have been neglected, and you're looking at this and you're addressing it. You have a program in effect now to repair the road in Howell Township which are in serious disrepair. I don't want to go on and on. I could go on for 15, 20 minutes expounding on this. But I think every resident in the township should know that you're here for the best interest of them. They will not always agree with every issue, every decision you make. There are decisions you've made that I disagreed with. But looking at them, I think they're in the best interest of the township. Mr. Mayor, and I'll cut this short, and every councilman, councilwoman up here, I don't think anybody can challenge your leadership ability, your honesty, or your integrity. That cannot be challenged any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you. Jim Stanberry. Mr. Stanberry, welcome. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Only one more after him?
And there is one person after Mr. Stanberry. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening. Before I get into the recall, I have a question for...
Jim, if you just give us your name and address, I'm
Jim
sorry.
Stanberry, Addison Road, Howell Township.
Welcome.
I thought everybody knew my big mouth. I have one question of Mrs. Showmaker, Councilperson Showmaker. Correct me if I'm wrong. The property that Mrs. Dixell was speaking about, didn't the township have the opportunity to buy that back in '97 during the Konopka administration when they first did in? That's the one in 524?
Talking about the Haskip-Shook Farm.
Haskip-Shook Farm.
Absolutely.
Wasn't that supposed to be a park?
right,
Where
hold
were
on,
all
folks.
the people then, instead of having, I don't remember anybody. There were very few.
Hold on, folks. Mr. Stanberry has the floor. I'm sure you did.
I'm sorry.
But address,
Go ahead.
address to the mayor, so
Go
you
ahead.
don't have that.
Go ahead.
You are
I
correct.
do not remember a whole lot of dissidents on that particular piece of property at that time.
You
I
are
may be
correct. That
wrong.
was a missed opportunity. Thank you.
Huge
That's
missed
my only
opportunity.
comment.
Thank you very much.
All right, hold on, folks. Hold on. Give Mr. Stanberry the floor,
This,
please.
if I remember correctly, the recreation, what do you want to call it?
Recreation Master Plan?
Yeah, the recreation master plan was presented to Mayor Konopka at that time, and this was in it.
That's
And
exactly
it
right.
was-
It's a 130-acre park.
Correct. But I lost that election, so I can say anything I want. In reference to this recall, Mr. Mayor, Joseph, my friend, I will offer you any help that I can in combating this despicable attempt by some citizens to overturn a bona fide election. I cannot understand some of the mentality of residents of this town. It's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. This is nothing more than an attempt at a character assassination. I will give you any help necessary, any help that I can do. The speakers before me were much more eloquent at this than I am, so I will leave it at that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Except that I'd like to thank you. Mr. Stanberry is a personal friend, and when he got word of this today, he called me and gave me many words of encouragement, which mean a great deal to me personally.
And I
Thank you,
hope
Jim.
you do not back out of the freeholder thing.
No, gee. All right. Thank you, Mr. Stanberry. All right. Shh. No. Next meeting. Thank you, Jim.
Mrs.
Miss-
Dixell, with all due respect.
Mrs. Taylor, you want to?
Haskell stood here and said he
Okay,
will
okay,
not show
okay.
that property
All
to
right.
the Howell Township,
All right.
to anything on
Good.
this earth.
Mrs. Taylor, welcome. Come on up. The floor is yours, and you'll be the last speaker tonight. Nice to see you. Okay. That's okay. Just give us your name and address, and
Hello, Elaine.
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Shh, hold on, folks.
Please,
Go
ladies
ahead,
and
Ms.
gentlemen.
Taylor.
I'll make it quick as possible. My name is Elaine Taylor, Maxim Southern Road in Howell. I'm sure everyone's noticed that the trees around the Grange have been all cut down. I represent the Grange. I'm the master of the Grange, and I just have a concern about the tree ordinance and how it protects the trees, because all of the trees around the Grange were cut down, and I thought that we wrote this ordinance to protect the trees. in
On your
some way.
property?
Not on our property, no, on the property that's going to be developing the Village Square
Okay.
Plaza.
Mr. Nunziato, go ahead, please.
Yeah,
Great
she
question.
is absolutely correct. It is the Village Square Shopping Center, and it is, I guess, between her and
The
let's say
sign.
Walmart. It's adjacent to Kent Plaza.
Right.
That's the one where they took the drainage down Kent Road, and they're going to cross and picked up that big puddle that's been there. They're going to run it all the way to Clayton, down Clayton. And we had the discussion not too long ago about the storm sewer
Oh, yeah.
issue.
They want other people to pay to tie in?
That's the
Right,
one.
right.
But in reference to her tree ordinance, there is a woodlands plan approved for that site. And again, they're required to flag the limits of clearing and adhere to that, and they have at this point.
So it won't necessarily be a one-for-one replacement of the trees that are taken down, but are they also then going to contribute to the tree fund, which was established as part of that ordinance, where we can put trees elsewhere?
Well, As it's particular to this project, I will have to look into how that is going to be. There's going to be landscaping that is required,
All right.
as is typical.
So they are going to
of-
have to replant trees to make up for those that they have taken down.
There is a woodlands plan for clearing, and there's a landscaping plan for what gets landscaped after the improvements are put in.
And was that project approved before or after our tree ordinance was adopted?
After.
It was probably done prior to the adoption of the
So
new
if it was
ordinance.
done before, the new law that we passed, which makes it much more stringent, would not apply. If it got an approval prior to that,
Why do you think it was after, Elaine? Elaine just said it was after.
I think that the project was approved after.
I don't know. But you're
We'll have to
saying,
look
Mr.
that up.
Nunziato, there is a woodlands management plan which will require them to comply with our law regardless?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Can you look into the specifics and call Ms. Taylor and let her know what it is they're going to have to replenish by way of
Certainly.
trees and whatnot?
Of course.
Okay?
I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Taylor?
Yes. On the, briefly on the riparian buffers ordinance that you'd like to modify, I feel that in Howell, I think we should keep all of the area, my opinion is that we should keep all of the area C1 classification, because we have a responsibility to our residents to supply water for them for now and for a long time in the future. When you start messing around with a watershed here in Howell, I think that we're going to be very sorry in the future. So please think about that before you make your decision.
We certainly will.
And thirdly, not to beat a dead horse, but on that Havens Bridge project,
She's gonna bring up the bards again.
I know it's a dead horse, but I just heard something that was a little disturbing to me, and I needed to get clarification. The gentleman that was opposed to keeping the farmhouse there, I don't know his name, but I heard that he was appointed to the zoning,
Alternate two position.
an alternate to the zoning. Now, I don't know if he's even a citizen of Howell yet, but I felt that, I personally feel it's an
He is.
insult
He is.
and inappropriate for that individual to be appointed to that position, where he's not a resident of Howell yet.
No, he's a resident.
He is a
Anyone,
resident.
when they fill out the application form, which is
So is he
Public
living in Howell now?
yes.
He is living in Howell. And
I have
how-
an issue with it too, Ms. Taylor, but yes, he is renting in Howell, and he's under contract to move into the home right by where they're tearing him down. Right now, he's a resident, he's renting at 14 Decoy Lane.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, whether you rent or own a property is completely irrelevant. You are a resident entitled to the same rights as anyone, and also, in fairness, that individual was not the only
I
individual
was just gonna
who
say that,
contacted
there
us.
was
We
many,
received
residents.
phone calls, petitions, emails from a host of people. It
I
certainly
noticed
was
some
not
things
one
that maybe
person.
Elaine doesn't. There's some criminal activity that has happened there too. I can't get into details of that, but
Well,
there's.
we spoke to her.
I don't know if she knows that. Does she know
She
it?
knows that.
Okay.
I don't know what the criminal activity is, but,
It was very indecent activity.
but I'm troubled by this, and I am, and that's why I'm here, because this gentleman was allowed to enter that property, I believe, where, the Grange had offered to do a project.
He
never
didn't,
did.
we
He
did
never
not
entered that.
obtain those pictures from this gentleman, per se.
No.
And I know you can't talk about it because it's a crime scene and all of that, I
So
understand
anybody
that.
that went in there, Ms. Taylor, obviously did not ask for our permission to go in there. They did so solely on as they see fit, basically. They just went in there. But in all fairness to the individual who was appointed to the zoning board, he
How
did
long-
not,
may
was
I
the only
ask?
person who had a problem with this barn being there. And did you ever had the opportunity to look at the pictures that we were
No,
presented to? I
no.
think that the police department hasn't really released those pictures, Tom. Am I correct in saying that? I mean, if you see those pictures, I think you will have a
said
change of mind.
I don't know, there may be an ongoing investigation under those circumstances. They probably would not release those pictures.
That's right.
So they're just not available to the public right now.
There's two issues there.
If there is an
Structures-
ongoing police investigation, criminal investigation, they're not under the Oprah law or any other statute I'm aware of militated to release those pictures
It-
until they, and they may never depending on whether or not they're
I understand.
evidentiary.
And besides that, Mr. Taylor, not just these pictures, which are very, very disturbing, but the conditions of the building.
Right, that's the other issue.
It just didn't allow us to even think about renovating it and putting good money into bad money, basically. So we will find a spot for, we know you're looking, so we're working towards that. We'll get there.
As much as I would like to help you, and we spoke about it, and if the buildings were in good shape, but we had our own inspectors go in there, and they said, just no way. It would have costed so much money to even get them into where they were habitable. Sorry.
Did everybody here take a look at it?
Did I? No.
We got the report from our construction officer, and just briefly, his letter, he went out, he looked at it and said the buildings, the structural integrity of the buildings is questionable, that the buildings are not safe, and that they need to come down. And that's not all. I mean, we're not construction experts. The manager dispatched the person to go out there and look at it, and the recommendation was, and I know we've talked about this before, is that it would be cheaper to bulldoze them and build new than it would be to potentially refurbish them because of the damage to the electrical system, the roof, the structural integrity of the building, the plumbing, the foundation of it itself is questionable. So we know we have dispatched Ms. Schlegel to work with you to find another location. We would like to help you find another location, and we will, but it's got to be a safe location so that we're not putting anyone in harm's way because of the structural integrity of a building. And you have our commitment. We want to do that. Any other questions on this?
No.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Taylor?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back and get into the agenda.
Let's go.
Mr. Licata, how much time do you need on your piece here?
Oh, wait a second. What are we doing?
He's got, this is the people from the Wawa issue. We would like to approve the-
I would say 5 minutes or less.
How much?
you're
5
up.
minutes or
5
less?
minutes or less.
All right, why don't you come on up?
Thank you.
Folks, I would just ask if you'd be so kind and maybe take any discussions out into the hallway. We're going to reconvene.
Agenda, we're going to go straight to them?
No.
I think that we should do, because their discussion, right?
So let's let them go home.
Without telling us.
Let them present.
Go ahead, Mr. Licata. Give us your name and address and tell us what you're here for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hold on, folks, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, break's over. Can you take your conversation out to the hallway? Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Go ahead, Mr. Licata.
Good evening. Peter Licata of Sonnenblick, Parker, and Selvers on behalf of Wawa. I'm here with John Machoka tonight, who's a PE. We're here to ask your reconsideration of the vacation of a drainage and conservation easement regarding a proposed site improvement to the facility at Howell Road and Route 33. I apologize, I wasn't here when this matter was first considered. I didn't know it was on your agenda. We had submitted for the Zoning Board of Adjustments approval a revised site layout. The existing facility had a drainage and conservation easement that you see outlined in blue. What you also see drawn on this map is the revised site as approved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. During that process, we proposed replacing the drainage and conservation easement shown in blue with the one that's shown in orange, which is larger in size and borders the adjoining residences on the other side of the property. Due to the fact that we changed the location of the detention basin. So what you see in this square area is where the existing detention basin is. That runoff ran out here towards 33 and also towards the residences along the Lions Court Road. The revised site provides for a detention basin in this corner of the property and directs water runoff away from the adjacent residences. As part of what I'm going to call the larger and improved buffer area, we agreed to berm this portion of the conservation easement in order to provide a visual obstacle that would protect the residences from the Wawa site. We also agreed to a number of plantings, which I will show you on a colored rendering, as well as install monitoring wells in that area to protect against any spills that may occur, and also test tap water from some adjoining residences. This larger conservation easement has in fact already been dedicated to the township. During a pre-construction meeting, I believe, or thereabouts, we were advised that we should approach the township to formally vacate the old, no longer needed drainage and conservation area before construction commenced, and hence our request for you to do that. But again, this area in orange, which you see depicted in color in this green area here with the plantings, is the new conservation area that we have already granted to the township.
Let me
Go ahead, Peter.
Let me be the
Mr.
first one to
Vasco,
comment
please.
about this. Tom, I want you to go back and forth with me a little bit on this. When we were given this as a council not that long ago, after the zoning board did approve it, the main objection that some people had to this new plan was that based on ordinances, this would be a dangerous precedent in allowing this to happen because it would open up for conservation easements elsewhere to possibly be changed. Now, I, in particular, that night argued against that, but was outvoted. From his presentation of the plan, I'm talking about Peter right down here before me, this obviously actually is a site improvement. So from an improvement perspective, I think there's no question that this actually improves the site and makes it more beneficial even to the homeowners that are behind the site and that they have less likelihood of being flooded out. So the only question in my mind, before I continue with the same vote I had last time, is from a legal perspective, the argument again as to why the rest of the council members killed this last time had to do with just setting a precedent, which we didn't want to necessarily do.
Well, I think in terms of setting a precedent, that's not a real concern in light of the fact that this has been.
Somebody's cell phone.
Yeah, someone could check their cell phones again, please. Come on home.
Vibrating? Somebody's vibrating somewhere? We got to get on a different frequency.
Okay. The most bizarre thing.
Yeah. That's a jamming device that the Iraqis are using.
Go ahead, Mr.
In this matter, it went before the Board of Adjustment, and I'm assuming at that point the board's engineers reviewed it, reviewed the stormwater, the site plan, everything they do in the site plan, and it approved it based on the township standards as they
Correct.
presently exist. As a result of that, it appears that there has to be a realignment or a rededication of the conservation/drainage easement. So in terms of precedence, it may occur, again, if one of the boards grants another type of approval, but it's not going to happen without a full review by our engineering staff or the consulting staff of any particular conservation easement. They just don't get repealed.
So you're answering my question. Other applicants couldn't just run amok without having to go through due process and proceedings that we would then have opportunities to challenge.
And I'm assuming that the board engineers reviewed it and liked it and said it works as good, if not better, according to council here, it will work better than the previous easement, and approved it. And one of the ramifications is that the new easement has to be dedicated over the old, and the old easement has to be vacated.
So I would, before I would actually make a motion, which I will in a second, I see the environmental former chairs out there, Don Smith, and I think it was Pauline that had the biggest objection, and that's why we actually voted no last time as a council, so I would give him this opportunity to come up here and maybe restate the case before I make a motion either way, if he wants to.
Yeah, no.
You
Okay.
don't wanna- okay.
No comments, Mr. Smith?
At that time, there was no map or anything.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And I think it was just a caution
Good.
in terms of
All right, well, so
setting
I
a
would
precedent.
make a motion that when we go ahead and approve, based on guidance from the zoning board, of course, and based on some of the testimony we're hearing tonight from the attorney and also from our attorney.
Okay, so you make a motion that
We
we
approve it.
introduce an ordinance.
Yes.
This needs to be done by ordinance, is that correct?
It was an ordinance,
Okay.
so we'll have to put the ordinance back onto the.
All right, so I would amend it to say we introduce an
All
ordinance
right,
to.
so we have a motion on the floor, we need a second.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Are under comments, this would be to direct the administration to prepare a ordinance for first reading. At which time, Ms. Woolman?
February 7th.
At the February 7th meeting. Any remarks?
Workshop, February 21 is your regular.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry I came in late.
Sure.
But I believe some of the, and you might have discussed this, and I apologize. if
Mr.
you did.
Licata, hold up the map for Mr. Milano,
Oh,
if you
sure.
don't mind. I think
But,
once he sees the picture, which might speak to 1,000
Well, I
words.
think there was a concern about us setting a precedent for.
You missed all
just
that.
said, yeah.
Oh, so that's been
Yeah.
addressed.
Mr.
Okay.
Gannon did indicate that there is no precedent-setting manner with this. We now have clarity, which we didn't have previously, with respect to a visual of what actually is being done. It's a bigger drainage easement
And conservation easement,
and
yes.
conservation easement, better located, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
Okay.
It has
Any
the
other
contains the
comments?
old one.
Any additional comments?
Mayor, I just had one question for Mr. Okada.
Yes.
The easements, have they been prepared and reviewed by the new ones?
Yeah, the new easements were actually prepared and reviewed back in '04 and actually have
Oh,
already
okay.
been conveyed to the town. The deeds have been filed with the county clerk's
Okay.
office.
So they've been approved and they are in effect on record?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any additional comments? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second to have this readied for ordinance introduction. Roll call, please. It's an ordinance, actually. I think you said the 7th. Is it doable to have this ready by the 7th? I mean, we had what was the former ordinance.
I don't know if there's a rush one way or the other. Once, I don't want to speak for council, but obviously...
There has been some delay in the construction as a result. Perhaps if we could move ahead with our pre-con meeting and other things.
Just set it up for introduction at the next regular meeting, and then...
Introduction at the next regular meeting.
Exactly.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes.
Thank you,
Mr.
everyone.
Licata. All right, unfinished business. We have one item prior to getting the agenda. I need a member of the council to please make a motion directing Mr. Tom Gannon to submit a petition of appeal on behalf of the governing body to the Commissioner of Education, the State of New Jersey, opposing in an official capacity the redistricting plan as proposed by the Freehold Regional Board of Education. We have a draft. It's being
Mayor.
further embellished, but we need a motion.
I make a motion, Mayor.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Under remarks.
Under remarks, I would like to see if we can forward this to Farmingdale. We did receive in our packet this week, Farmingdale also opposes the redistricting. I would like to see if they would like to get on board with us.
Can you join with us?
Yes.
It's a great idea. Can we look into that and see if they'll be willing to join us?
I'll reach out to their municipal attorney, and I'll forward him a copy of it and ask him if he brings it before his governing body to see if they want to jointly enter the petition or at least become involved in the process.
Great. And as a reminder to the members of the council, by close of business Friday, we need any final thoughts and or comments on this matter to Mr. Gannon's office. I'm sorry, to Ms. Woolman, who will collect them, and then to Mr. Gannon. Okay, hearing no other comments, roll call, please.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, okay. Call everyone's attention to consent agenda items. Those are the items marked with the asterisks. These include items 9, all of the 9 Bs. I do not believe there are any add-ons this evening.
Motions.
We can do motions simultaneously, which are the 9 Cs.
Mayor, under motions, under 9C7, we have to appoint MRSA representative, 1-year, 5-year term effective. And on that,
Hold on one second, under where? You know what, why don't we do this first? Why didn't someone make a motion? We'll get a second, and then under remarks, we can talk about it.
okay, well, that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, I'm
She's trying to
sorry.
remove 9C7.
Under
You wanna-
9C7, under motions, we have to appoint a MRSA representative, and I would like to,
Handle it separate.
Well, that's not a
Handle that
consent agenda
separate.
anyway.
Mayor, I suggest we deal with the 9Bs resolutions.
separately?
Okay.
And then you go to 9Cs.
All right, why don't we get a motion and a second on the 9 Bs, please?
Motion to approve all the consent agenda items that are 9Bs, from 9B1 all the way up to 9B36.
Comment.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, under remarks.
Comment on page 3. Question.
Okay. Which item?
Under 9B10, what is the reason for the reduction on the Treasure Island self-storage site, Bill?
I have to pull it up, but I suspect it's because he had a full bond for doing the whole entire site, and maybe he phased it or he did part of it, so he wants just a reduced bond.
Okay.
So he's asking, but
Well, that's normally what that's been done in other times.
all the time.
Under the law, they have
A rate.
developers can ask for a reduction in bond. We go out and inspect, and then the engineer makes a recommendation up to, I think, 33% or something like that.
On page 6, 9B27, that's in regards to the barns being removed? That's the amendment to the development's agreement?
Yes, ma'am, and that is authorizing, we've already sent it over to council for Lanier Homes. As you may recall, we own those buildings as a result of the dedication of the property to the township. the developer's agreement will then provide for them to go back to the planning board and have that, that one page of the site plan, or the, I think it's the open space or whatever it is, that shows buildings to be, presently say buildings to be maintained, we'll say buildings to be demolished. This will give them the opportunity to go in and do it without any cost to the township.
Wonderful.
And they're also going to request some further relief from the planning board, but that, and that was for a one-year extension, which we had no objection to. So hopefully they'll agree to it, and we will avoid having to pay tipping fees, impose any liability, et cetera, and they'll do it without having the township incur any cost or liability.
9B29, authorized release of performance guarantee, Ardena at Coltsview. I don't know that this has anything to do with, but the flooding that occurs there on 5 Points Road, as Stanley has said, was not in the condition that it is prior to that development there. So I have a lot of concerns, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the performance guarantee, but it does have something to do with 9B36, and I should certainly hope, Bill, that, you know, in light of all the flooding there, that we don't resurface that road when the water just lays there, because you and I both know what that's going to do to the macadam, and we're
Well,
going to be in the same situation.
There are compound issues on 5 Points Road. I mean, you've got 2 or 3 or 4 developments that all either drain on 5 Points or contribute to a culvert that crosses 5 Points. In some cases, it might be as simple as jetting the line. We may need to increase the size of the line. We may need to just reconfigure it. But as far as particularly the Zeminski project itself, we did go out there about a week and a half ago. We had that really big windy flood, heavy rainstorm. And we did witness some areas of 5 Points that have flooded and where the problem areas were. And again, we did look particularly internal to the Zeminski site. His detention basin was functioning. The stream was not overcrowded. Some of the concerns that Mr. Marciniak did have are valid concerns, but they were not relevant to this particular site.
Because I travel that road probably 10 times the course of every day, and that's, you know, how it dips down there where that storm drain is. It's flooded all the time. All right, and last one. Why were all the bids rejected on the Aldridge Lake dredging?
Low bid was $474,000. I think we have about $325 encumbered at this point.
So they were all
Good reason.
Good reason. Okay.
Well, Bill, I have a question, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please, go right ahead, sir.
Didn't we have some grants money towards that?
Yes, we do.
What's going to happen with these grants monies now?
Mr. Filiatro has requested an additional extension so that we can either look for additional funding via 2006 budget or possibly bonding or other means. So we're requesting another extension.
How much grants monies do we have available?
We had 2 grants for, I believe, a total of $275.
So that's over half of what's required to dredge the whole lake.
We actually have
I know
325.
it may not make sense, but wouldn't dredging half of the lake be better than not dredging
Absolutely
anything at
not.
all?
No.
I understand that there's an area of the lake that's actually in worse shape than the other.
Again, it's something where the reason you actually dredge the lake is because they call it eutrophication, where it actually fills up with silt, and then the stuff starts growing out of it and just goes from a lake to a meadow to it just ceases to become a lake. And you need to get it down to a depth of, let's say, 6 feet in order for it to function as a lake.
So in your professional opinion, it does not make sense to dredge half of the lake?
The lake restoration people have hammered into me for the last 10 years. It is not the proper. I asked the same question you did. Let's do half a lake. They said you can't do that.
Councilman, maybe we can tweak the specs, go out to bid again, and if they're still high under the, and this is just a suggestion, I'll talk it over with Jeff and Bill, under the local contract law, if you go out to bid twice and they're above your projected budget, you then have the opportunity to go out and negotiate with bidders, so you may be able to get the price lowered on the basis of going out to bid twice and not receiving bids that are within your projected budget. And certainly the budget set forth by the grant, I think, would be good would be a good base mark to look at. So that may be a suggestion.
And we could do that without jeopardizing the grants, secure grants money.
Right, and in
And-
fact, that may help by going out to bid a second time, and then you can negotiate.
I believe this was the second time, wasn't it?
Oh, was
Yes,
it the second
this
time?
was the second time.
All right,
That's
so in
correct.
that case,
Now you can
then,
move
then you
forward
can, then you can go forward and reach out to the bidders and see if there's anybody that may want to come in under, they'll still have to put up bonds, et cetera, but sometimes you get a cheaper price because they don't have to go through the formal bid for whatever reason.
I think we should forward a note to Jeffrey in light of that this is the second bid, that we need to move forward now and find out what the deadline is for the extension on the grant, so that we don't lose the grant.
Right,
Yeah,
I think
we-
that, in light of the grant money, I think
We have
that's
to
the
move
reason to
forward.
try to go out and negotiate, because that could be a basis for the fact that you did reject the two bids and now have the right to go out and negotiate a price.
All right, so the takeaway is, I apologize, I'm going to interrupt, just while I got this thought. We're going to communicate with Mr. Filiatro to make sure he takes the necessary measures, correct?
And go out and reach out and solicit
Okay.
quotes and bids or whatever, RFPs, and then you can sit down and negotiate.
Okay.
Yes.
So we
Right,
still need to reject the
Yes.
second.
I'm assuming
bids.
you're going to reject the
Yes.
second
Correct.
bids.
Mr. Walsh, you had a comment, sir?
We spoke a little bit. I went to the bid that day, and nobody else was even close to that low bid. There was like 5 or 6 other bidders. Nobody else was even in the realm.
Of the low bid?
Of the low
Which was
bid.
still higher than
Nobody
ours.
else was close. Nobody else
It's
was at
actually a tie for second.
Yeah, there was a tie for second, $125,000 higher. But, we spoke with some other alternatives that day. Bill, have you went through them with?
Well, actually, the way the grants were written, it was very specific in the verbiage of the grant itself. And we had asked for consideration to also consider purchasing the equipment that would allow us to do that. We asked for that clarification in the grant extension as well as another option.
Okay.
And that is still something we don't have answered at this point. But
Okay.
that is another alternative, yes.
Because we had spoken about that, see, about buying the equipment and doing it ourselves, because we're going to need it in the future for the other lakes.
That's correct.
So, okay.
All right, any additional comments on the consent agenda items?
On 9B34,
Yes, sir.
Speaking with different people, are we sure we're doing the right thing by opening up and looking into this property up there that's a landfill?
9B34.
I know we spoke about it some.
We also got an interpretation, there was a note in our packet in regards to this.
Yes, from Brinkerhoff.
Yeah.
My understanding, and I could be mistaken, I know that the deputy mayor has been our point person on this, and and it's a brilliant idea, in my view, was to explore whether or not something could productively be done there, and to get an understanding of what kind of environmental hazards we may actually have there. So this may be a benefit to understand the contaminants and what could be going on there, and this study will at least give us some direction about what could be done.
That's actually correct. There's more to it than that as well. There's documents going all the way back to the early 80s on this site with regards to our contractual obligations with the county as well. And in fact, Tom in our last packet had sent us stuff giving us his opinion on that. And right now that it can only be used for recreational purposes, even if it was remedied. But part of the process would be to see in our discussions with them what other things we might be able to do. So it was more than just seeing whether it was environmentally sound. It was just going through all the contractual obligations too, and going through a whole slew, a ream of paper that's been filed over the years. And then also to look at the mining of the product that's there to be burned for energy and how much monies we can make from that, and whether it was viable to do it from a funding point of view, to getting grant monies, et cetera, to possibly help in doing it. So there was a lot of things to this little study.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes,
may.
sir.
I was under the impression that we're going to reach out to the county before we did this expenditure and find out if perhaps mining was one of those. Somebody's phone is going off. Mine is off, so it's all.
Okay.
My battery's dead, sorry.
Anyway, I apologize.
Go
for
ahead,
that.
I'm
So,
sorry.
in any event, we're going to reach out to the county to see if mining was one of those was actually permissible before we went ahead and authorized to spend the $10,000 to do the study. And I don't think that, at least I haven't seen an answer back from the county. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if we have reached out to them or not.
Good question. Ms. Woolman, do you know?
Well, Tom, I want to ask Tom before we get to Penny. In your opinion on this, Tom, did you speak of as to whether or not, in your little bit of research on it, that mining was something we could do?
It was silent on that issue.
Right.
I think everybody has correctly stated dialogue, and I think that it started because we're paying a couple $100,000 under the 10 to 15 year.
Sure.
And there was an issue whether or not we wanted to have Brinkerhoff review the potential for making, not only review what's there, but also the potential for generating some revenue. But I can't recall whether or not we were supposed to reach out to the county to see if they would. There was some discussion on that, and I don't know if that was before or after this. But
All right, so I will comment on what
Bruce
Juan
isn't
said.
here, so I'm kind of at a loss myself to recall the
All right, so
details.
I'll comment on what Juan just said. If we do have you reach out at your billable rate to the county to find out whether they would actually entertain this discussion, that Juan would rather spend those dollars.
I'll
rather
give you a
than
free
$10,000.
phone call, Peter.
All right.
Well, I thought that, honestly, I thought that, the manager's office was supposed to have reached out.
That's
to
what I
the
remember, too, to be quite candid.
That is the case. The manager was going to call. We were going to have heard prior to acting on this whether or not we could in fact even do something there, do the study. And Mr. Davis is out sick, so I don't know that we know anything. So,
All right, so I would say that we should maybe pull this again tonight. It's not urgent.
I think the county, what we need would be probably some type of hold harmless and or right of entry, and I don't think they'd have a problem. I mean, between government entities, but it's probably something that should be straightened out.
So can we make a motion contingent on the fact that they'll permit us?
But what little I do know about this,
Wait a
I
minute.
will is that when Bruce.
Use the mic, Penny, so people can.
When Laura
Just push the button.
All right. When the clerk spoke to Brinkerhoff stated they didn't need to get onto the property in order to do their study.
That's the second step.
Okay. Does that doesn't help with this?
He just
Okay.
wants to know whether we even,
Well, the
before we
county-
spend the $10,000 for them to go
Well-
do the study, is the county even going to let us
Right.
consider mining? Otherwise, the whole
I mean,
thing
it's
is
the
just-
county's, they have title to it, and we're just paying the bill.
Right.
But that was something that came about 15 years ago, and I don't know.
Great deal.
Yeah, well,
So let's not wait.
sounded like a good deal at the time, but. in
Tom
any
has already
event,
offered a free phone call, so let's not wait on the manager's office doing it. Why don't we have Tom call?
I'll call the county council and
all
see
right,
what they can
would
do.
who was the maker of the motion? Do you recall?
On the whole,
On the whole consent
that was
agenda?
me. So I,
Mr. Tabasco?
Peter and Cynthia second.
So would
so I
agree
would
to
amend by
to pull?
pulling 9B34. Was there anything else that we pulled in our discussion so far?
Not so
I
far.
lost track.
You agree to second?
Yes.
Okay, so the maker and the seconder have agreed to withdraw 9B34. Any other comments on the 9Bs, the consent agendas? Okay, hearing none. No additional comments. We have pulled 9B34. All other items, roll call, please.
Mr. Malabay?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBello?
Yes.
I have one comment, just so.
Yes, sir.
There was a meeting or two ago that, Bob, you had raised that question. If you had something that you had a question about, what the proper process would be and would we honor it, and you saw just now that actually in action. Juan had a question, and we basically tabled it. So
right.
in the future, if you have something you're questioning, we'll honor you, so.
That's the process.
That's the process.
All right, we now have the there are no public hearings on ordinances, so we're 9A. We have introduction of ordinances. I'd call
We have a motion, Mayor.
council's, what's that?
Did you do the motions?
Did we do the motions?
No, we did not. We just
We
did the
didn't
9B.
yet,
No.
but
Just did the
we got to go to the 9As before we get to the 9Cs. Right? Yes or no?
That sounds good to me.
Sounds
I
good?
don't
Okay. All right, so
ABC.
9A, we'll go ABC.
Oh, we're going to have public hearings, too. Ooh.
Okay, so with respect to 9A1, this is an amendment to the 2005, it's actually the 2006 salary ordinance. Actually, I think it's a typo on the agenda. I'll turn over to a member of the council.
Mayor, it could be 2005 because it may be retro based on the contracts.
I'm getting my computer.
You know what?
again.
You are correct.
Which one are we on, 9A1?
Yes.
All right, so it's
Ready?
2006 then.
You ready?
Motion to introduce ordinance number 06-1. Hey, the first one. On first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the January 2006 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on February 21, 06 at 8 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building. Need a second.
We do need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance to amend an ordinance entitled An Ordinance Fixing Salary and Compensation of Certain Officers, Positions, and Employees in the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, New Jersey for the years 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2009, and thereafter known by its short name as Howell Township Salary Ordinance.
Okay. Are there any additional remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Mullabay?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, 9A2, this is to vacate portions of Bry Avenue. It's case number SD 2796. This ordinance vacates 3 portions of Bry Avenue. Member of the council.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-06-2 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 1/2006 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on February 21st, 2006, 8 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I'm going to read the title of the ordinance.
I'm
and-
sorry,
it's
please read the
okay.
title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, vacating all the right, title, and interest in and to a portion of Bry Avenue as a result of the realignment design of a portion of said roadway.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, 9A3, rescinding ordinance number 0033, prohibit parking on a portion of Oak Glen Road. Member of the council?
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-06-3 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 1/2006 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title. That will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 2/21/06 at 8 p.m. prevailing time municipal building.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Okay, Ms. Woolman, would you please read the ordinance, the title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, repealing ordinance number 0-03-3 entitled An Ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, prohibiting parking upon a portion of dedicated right-of-way adjoining Oak Glen Road and located immediately in front of Block 35.92, lots 97 and 98.
We have a motion, we need a second. I'm sorry. Roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey?
Deja vu, huh?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
We'll go back to the beginning of the meeting, sorry?
Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor
I
DeBella?
don't think so.
Yes. Okay, and 9A4, amending Chapter 7, Winston Park and Redwood Road.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 06-4 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the January 2006 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing and a meeting of the Township Council to be held on February 7/06 at 8 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any remarks?
Mayor, I went through the draft. The only thing I want to make sure is that they have all the signage up there. I know it's the signage of advising no outlet and appropriate closures, but we had discussed that there would be no parking signs. There was certain signage that was discussed. That'll all be...
I actually performed an inspection last week. I drove all 10 roads within Winston Park, and I made notations as to what areas did not have signs. There were some roads that should have had no parking signs and did not.
haven't, right.
There was actually one person that actually took a sign off one of the roads and put it on his road, which was not ordinance, so it goes both ways. But I will...
I just felt that all the signs, because of what we were doing, all the signage in that development should have been reviewed, and whatever needed to be, that wasn't there, that was removed, needed to be replaced, especially the no parking signs down in the area by the bank and the plaza.
Yeah, we checked with the clerk's office. There are 10 roads. There are 4 or 5 of them that were ordinance. No, and actually, it is not no parking. It is restricted parking,
Okay.
like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. I guess for the commuters.
Right.
But nonetheless, we
Right.
will take care of that.
Okay, thank
Bill,
you.
I think, just to follow up on that, there was some no parking signs to be installed, especially on the.
That's a
where the-
separate
where the-
issue.
Where the roads
Right.
closures are going to take place.
That will have to actually be ordinanced as a no parking area. That is a separate and distinct, but you are
Oh, okay.
correct. Yes, that's a
Okay.
separate issue.
Because you want the emergency vehicles going through there, and God forbid that there's a car parked there.
I believe the police department will be doing the investigation and do a report, and then we'll draft and promulgate an ordinance on that. I think there was an issue with regard to areas that were supposed to be signed for no parking that, for whatever reason, there were no signs. I think that's what Mrs. Shoemaker's addressing.
Any other questions?
No, Mayor.
Okay, would
By
you
the way,
read-
just before you, Officer Bishop apparently had an opportunity to review the ordinance and okayed it.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Gannon, for putting this together so fast, by the way.
It's actually my partner, but I'll pass it along.
Please do. Would you read the title of the ordinance, please?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 7 entitled Traffic to effectuate the closing of Redwood Road in 2 locations.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Mulliday?
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, we have the motions. I'm going to ask a member of the council to request that we act on 9Cs 1 through 6, and that we separately, in a moment, talk about 9C 7.
So moved, Your Honor.
Okay, we have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any remarks on 9C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Mulliday?
Yes.
Mrs. Shoemaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. With respect to 9C 7, discussion on MRSA representative.
Do we need to make a motion first?
Yes.
Okay. We need
I would
to,
actually motion that we table this. And the reason, I don't actually, now that I think about it, maybe we don't need to make a motion. We'll come back to that. Let's have discussion. We now have been told tonight that there may be, in fact, 2 positions available. And if there indeed, in fact, is, it might make more sense to do both simultaneously. So
With
there
all,
still remains some gray areas here that I might want to have resolved instead of appointing one and then another person maybe a month later.
well, with all due respect, this appointment has to be done by February 1st.
Why?
It's when it expires, and it was in there. Because otherwise, I think if you read in your book that it states that the person that's in place will automatically, if it's somebody isn't appointed, will go back into that position. Ms. Penny, isn't it? It states something like that. So we have to make an appointment.
Does it really say that?
Yeah,
Because
I'm gonna
because the person that we're,
Yes, read the letter from MRSA. What
I
does it
think
say?
and I haven't read that particular ordinance
Yeah.
or statute, but most likely it means they hold over until an appointment.
well, the reason
Therefore,
why
I-
we're,
Or else it's just vacant.
I say leave with Mrs. Merlino.
Well, I haven't make a motion that we,
well, let's finish the discussion. So I want to make sure, Tom, so
3 times you interrupted me making a motion. With all due respect, Pete,
Well, we were
3
remarking.
times you made.
I almost
We're
made-
not at remarks. We make a motion, then we remark. To clarify me if I'm wrong. You're the attorney.
That's correct.
Thank you.
But that's correct, I'm the attorney, but what do you want me to tell you?
I made a motion. With all due respect, ladies and gentlemen,
To do what?
this is live.
right.
And I hope that you all watch yourself in the evenings. With all due respect,
Well, what are you trying to say?
Mr. Gannon,
Go ahead.
I've tried to make a motion 3 times. Do we make the motion, or do we have discussion?
You made a motion, was there a second?
She hasn't made the motion yet. Make the motion.
Go ahead, Cynthia. Entertain your motion, please. Go right ahead.
I feel like I'm in a circus. I make a motion to appoint for the MRSA, Mr. Wayne Lucy, to the 5-year term, which is effective February 1st of '06. And
Okay. All right, we have a motion. We need a second to have discussion.
I would second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Under remarks, Mr. Tabasco, I'll recognize you first.
Okay, now we'll have remark. So again, getting back to the situation, Tom, we know we have this person who actually, some of us feel isn't necessarily going to, I'm not talking about Wayne, by the way. I'm talking about the person that sits in one of the positions right now, who we feel may not necessarily represent the best interests of the town, not being a resident of the town. So I'm a little uncomfortable having that situation still exist. So what's the worst-case scenario if you don't fill the appointment and they go a month's meeting without having us there?
Mr. Mayor, can I just interject for a second, if I may?
Go ahead, sir.
I don't know, and Tom, you're the attorney, you make the big bucks, like you said, but
That's right.
I don't think that we should be discussing this possibility when we don't even know if this indeed is a true statement. We don't know that this person does not live in Howard Township any longer.
Well, we didn't mention by name. I'm just saying.
I understand, but
there's
well,
a
people
grayness
can
here.
figure out. One is due, the other one is not due. So, you know, whose name is it?
Well,
Doesn't matter. But
I gave an opinion with regard to the residency issue, and along with a number of other issues that were raised with regard to appointments. And you're right. There's nothing to, at this point, to indicate one way or the other what the residency issue, or at least the residency of both of the appointees are. But at the same time, I also gave a legal opinion that we didn't probably have the authority to remove unless we change our ordinance. So at that point, the question is, from a policy standpoint, either my office or the manager's office is to reach out and determine the actual status of that appointee from a residency standpoint, and then go from there, based on a policy that I believe is shared by all of the members, that you should be a resident of the municipality that you represent on the board. So there's a couple steps involved to get to that point that Councilman Tabasco is getting at. So that can be another motion or whatever.
All right.
Or if you believe it's something that should be done to coincide with this appointment, then that's something that the governing body has to make a determination. That's what Mr. Tabasco raised, but what we do know is that there is an appointment that needs to be filled for the February 1st reorganization of Marissa. And the second appointment is problematic, and we don't know when we'll have an opportunity to fill that, if we do.
I have another remark. Getting very specific with the person Cynthia just nominated. I'm not saying I'm taking a position on either point of this comment I'm about to make, but Wayne was a sitting council person as little as 2 months ago when we passed an ethics ordinance that basically banned council people from serving in township roles for at least a year. So this is kind of gray because he wasn't an elected official. And the MRSA position isn't technically a position of the town, but I think the intent of what we did is that something couldn't happen in the town that could be potentially rewarded by you getting a position of any kind within a year of you working for the town. So I'm a little uneasy with that particular appointment, even though legally, technically, I think I've now been cleared tonight that it is actually okay. I'm still not comfortable with the intent.
One thing that you may know, that on the board of MRSA,
And nothing slighting Wayne, and I like Wayne.
any seated council person that sits on this board here is entitled to be appointed to the MRSA board and sit also on the MRSA board. And I believe that our legal counsel has brought that to our attention.
That's correct. In my analysis of looking at our ordinance and comparing that to the sewage authority law, under which Marissa, the genesis of Marissa was under the sewage authority law, that particularly allows a governing body member to be named to Marissa.
So
that went into my analysis with regard to how it would affect our
I think I'd
ordinance.
actually be more okay with that than somebody, and I'm, again, just talking about my morals versus somebody else's, than somebody that was a past council member. If, for example, if Cynthia wanted a position tonight, I'd be more okay with that than going against what we really intended to do by passing our ethics ordinance last year.
I'd like to say something if I could.
Mr. Walsh, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. this is what I believe part of what people in this town are getting tired of. I'm sitting on the other side, listening last year about one of the toughest ethics laws in the state of New Jersey, and nobody who's in a government position will be allowed to be appointed to things for, I believe, over a year after they're out. An elected official, okay? I'm looking at, the intent of what's being said, and then the intent being turned, the intent from the way a lot of people look at things, or some people, and I want to go a lot, the way some people look at things, the intent of what is said is being changed to them. And this is what this is what some people are getting tired of. I mean, Mr. Davis, our town manager, wrote this letter on January 4th to us. The subject is advertising deadlines, boards, committees, and commissions, representatives, liaison appointments. The subject of deadline date for submission of applications for a board, committee, or commission was brought up at last night's reorganization meeting. Be advised that originally, display advertisements seeking applications were placed on the Township Messenger November 2005 edition, the Township's website, and on TV 77, with the due date of December 16, 2005. While I was away on vacation, and when the due date neared with very few applications received, my office placed display advertisements in the Howell Times for 12/16/05 and the Tri-Town News for 12/15/05, edition with a deadline for application of December 22nd, 2005. Now, me being a sitting councilman, I left on vacation December 25th. I come back and I find in my packet the day I come back an application from Mr. Lucy from December 29th. I mean, when people who are part of the governing body don't even want to pay attention to the deadlines, do the deadlines really count anymore? Or is it just about, let's do whatever? I mean, I have a very tough time with it. I really, truly do. And I'm trying to stay as unpolitical as I could possibly be on this day. I mean, I really am. But this is what people are starting to perceive and have perceived in the past. And I spoke about this with the mayor. I spoke about this with Juan. Two wrongs don't make a right. Somewhere along the line, right has to just step up, rear its head, and be what's done. I have a hard time with the deadlines not being followed by a former councilman. I have a hard time with me not having the information. I have a hard time with the town manager putting December 22nd was the deadline and not being adhered to. I even have a hard time with Mr. Gannon's interpretation, but I'm not a lawyer. Me having a hard time when it doesn't count in this matter, I guess, except I'm allowed to say I have a real hard time with his interpretation. I mean, according to his interpretation from what I read, the ordinance we passed is a more doodly squat when it comes to this. So I am not a happy camper about things like this in my township. I really am not. I want to stop.
I'm next.
Go ahead. Anybody can say anything to me.
Go ahead, Ms. Woolman. The floor is yours.
Applications can be received year-round. The reason that we set deadline is for ease of the council. When the 16th approached, I did take it upon myself to put it in the newspaper because you had very few applications before you. So it was put in the newspaper, and because of that, we probably have at least double the amount in front of you to choose from. But that was the reason why it was put into the newspapers. But there is no deadline for applications in a sense. We receive them year-round from residents.
Well, then please don't put it in an advertisement again, edition with a deadline for application of December 22nd, 2005. Right. I mean, I'm reading that. I'm not a... And, me being a new councilman, I'm sitting here going through all the applications. Me and the mayor spoke before I left to go away. He asked me if I had anybody I'd like to appoint to anything. I really stayed out of it. I mean, as much as this is a free society and I have an even voice on this council, I pretty much understood that it would basically, it would not be up to me who was appointed to what. Let's cut to the chase. Okay, I voiced my opinion about things, but it wasn't going to be up to me. To come back and find numerous applications was upsetting to me. A few in particular, and this happens to be one of them. A city councilman who had deadlines put in the paper should have done his job.
Point was been made.
The only comment that I will make is that I called Mr. Malave, I called the deputy mayor, I called Mrs. Showmaker, and I called you.
Yes, you did.
And I said, collectively, we should kick around amongst ourselves telephonically any recommendations we'd like to have. Mr. Walsh, will afford you that courtesy continuously. And quite frankly, I can appreciate how, from your perspective, you might think that this may be stacked against you 4-1. I can assure you, when it comes to appointments, that's not the case.
Well, you heard right now that I have some issues with it, so it's not.
When I called you, it was legitimately to ensure that if you had someone that you'd like to be nominated or recommended to a board, that I would in turn telephonically pass it along to Mrs. Showmaker, the deputy mayor, and Mr. Malave, and in turn, they would make me aware, and I would kind of act as a telephonic intermediary, knowing that it was over the holidays, to try and build some consensus around that. And I do appreciate you had to leave for vacation, you were unable to get back to me, and the next time we got together, it was here in this meeting. I can honestly say, with respect to the deadline, that it has always been practice that there be a suggested cutoff date in deference to what Ms. Woolman said, so that binders and materials and agendas could be prepared so we would have it in enough time to be able to look at the material. But we are not in a position, at least in my humble view, to ever turn away someone who wants to volunteer, even if it means they got their form in a day or two late. Clearly, we would like to get them as timely as possible, but we are in a situation where we desperately need volunteers, and to sort of put a line in the sand and say, gee, you got it in late, we're not going to consider you to volunteer to help us, in my view, was not the intention of the deadline. Now, if we have an ordinance or a policy that says anything received after the deadline is not to be considered, then that's a different story. And the only thing I'll add is that for the first several years I lived in our community, before I was an elected official, I diligently put together a cover letter and a resume and sent in my form year over year over year to my predecessors. And they had openings that were left unfilled. And I was never given the courtesy of a phone call, of a response, nor was I appointed to anything. And I would respond, but there's openings. Put me on anything. I'll go on whatever you ask me to go on. I'll go on the Clean the Garbage Committee. And I was denied. So it was, I always felt in my heart that when we got up here and we had a chance, that we were not going to turn people away because of their political affiliation. We have appointed people who are of both members. Mrs. Dixell is a phenomenal volunteer, an extraordinary citizen, and for the first 2 years as a Democratic county committee woman, she was our appointed liaison to the local Board of Education, and it wasn't until she stepped down that we then had to find a replacement. So I honestly can tell you that we have looked at who's available, who's willing to volunteer, and that deadline, at least in my view, was never intended to be sort of a hard, fast deadline. Now, if you have issues with the candidate that Mrs. Showmaker has nominated, then we should talk about it, because that's legitimate. But honestly, I don't believe that we came up with a process that was intended to say if you got it in late, you wouldn't be considered. Now, we should debate the merits of any candidate, but not on the basis of time.
I haven't had an opportunity to speak. I'll just add one 10-second comment. So the only one we haven't heard from is Juan so far, and then Cynthia could take over again. But just what I said before is holding true here. The soul of us, who keeps you in check, is saying, I want Wayne. The mind of us, the conscience of me, is saying, well, there's some gray here. We haven't heard from the heart, and Bobby's trying to keep us all in check. So exactly what I said before is actually happening right now. It's good debate. So maybe we should hear from Juan first, and let Cynthia have last shot at it.
Yes, sure, Mr. Malay, he hasn't commented yet.
No.
Mr. Malay.
Maybe I don't want to come.
Okay, you have a comment you'd like to
Basically, I just, look, I feel very confident. I can go to sleep at night knowing that whatever decision I make here, it's never, ever, ever political, regardless of what it may seem like or regardless of what people may say. So based on that, I referred to to Mr. Gannon's advice as far as, you know, he gave us a, you know, how he interpreted the ordinance. There's, as far as he's concerned, it's really a non-issue. Then it's up to us to vote for whoever we feel can serve the term. And, you know what bothers me, though, about, and I would tell to Mr. Walsh this, it's, Bob, you and I have spoken about this in the past. You brought it to my attention. You said, you know, if you guys do that, it's political, blah, blah, blah. And I tell you that it's not, and you say, yeah, it is, and we can argue all night about this. Bottom line is that not everybody can be appointed all the times to everything, and there's room for other people to be involved. I mean, there's going to be other openings. May not be tonight, maybe not be tomorrow. Next year, there's another year. Now, I may not be here next year to appoint anyone, but regardless, you know, somebody is going to get appointed. Somebody's going to get left out. It's now. On the other hand, Mr. Walsh, I don't know that you're implying anything, but I do know that, without going into names or anything, that one of the applicants happened to be somebody who actually ran your campaign, basically, or was very involved with your campaign. So you want to talk about politics? I mean, one could perceive that perhaps you pushing for that person or the other because of political reasons, you know. So, but I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that it could be perceived that way. So that's all I have to say.
Oh, I think Mrs. Showmaker was
Okay.
asking to be next, and Mr. Walsh,
Absolutely.
I assure you I'll give you all the time in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine I'm the only female and I have 4 men that talk more than me?
Very good point. That's a good one.
We'll take that away from tonight.
Yeah.
Well,
You're one of the boys. So come on.
I've listened to all of your comments, and I must tell you, having the pleasure, and truly I say this from the heart, having the pleasure of serving this community for 5 years, this township, I have sat on the very first year, and I believe, if I recall, there was a joint couple, one being maybe Janice Foreman, if I recall, and another woman that actually would come at the time, and they would give us reports. You may recall this.
Might have been Francine
They
Jordan.
would come every 3 months and give us reports to this board on exactly what was going on in MRSA, how it affected our town, so on and so forth. I must tell you, from the appointments that have been made by our past predecessors, I have never seen either of those 2 ladies, other than one time Mrs. Spano came here the very first year and gave us any report. I don't know that if any of you understand, but MRSA collects wastewater from Howell, Farmingdale, Freehold, and portions of Freehold Township, pumps it to the Ocean County Utility Authority for treatment. And a lot of times people overlook exactly what this does for Howell Township. I have made a motion for Mr. Lucy. I think Mr. Lucy is very familiar with MRSA. He has worked on the sewer system with myself and others that sit on this board. He has worked with the budget. He is very familiar with the workings of the township. I think that he will serve the people and keep us well informed as to how this affects us. I have absolutely no negative feelings on the other applicant, other than my only concern would be that and I recall, and I will stand corrected, Councilman Walsh, that I believe that I attended a meeting one time where both you and the other applicant were present in a meeting, and it was either you were business partners or business partners to be, so the propriety of that situation may not even look good. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
We're not business partners, though.
No, but I think we did sit on a meeting, and maybe you were going to be business partners, and I wasn't sure if that actually transpired or
We
not.
discussed it.
Okay. So in light of that, I still make it doesn't matter. He said they're not business partners. But in light of that, my motion still stands for Mr. Lucy. I think that he's always said he was very proud serving Howell in the short time that he was actually appointed. He was not an elected official. And I feel very confident that he will, carry out what he did here, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Just one final 5-second comment. So both applicants happen to be politically active people. So the accusation as to whether this is a political appointment or not doesn't really fly because there's only 2 applicants. They just happen to be people that are politically active. So, and I go back to what I said at first. Since there's 2 positions, you know, what are we arguing about? If Mindy does, in fact, not reside here and is going to be pulled or asked to be pulled, then they're both going to be in the positions anyway because there's only 2 applicants. So.
The only comment that do you have any other comments, Mr.
Yeah, I'd like
Go
to
right
comment.
ahead, sir. Go, please.
Mr. Malavi, I know very little about politics. I'm just a businessman. What I learned, little I learned already, though, a lot of people run a guy who wins or a woman who wins campaign, and nobody runs a man or woman who loses. I think I learned that already. I think 15 to 20 people in Howell ran my campaign in 2005. Okay? Fact of the matter is nobody ran my campaign. But, you know, yeah, Mike's a friend of mine, but he's also served, I believe, 4 years on the planning board, 5 years on the Forest Preservation Task Force, and he owns a water company. I mean, who's more qualified to be on Mercer than somebody who owns a water treatment company? And I have a real tough time, I'm serious, sitting over there, listening, okay? I'm telling you now, if I go back in minutes, I'm going to find comments like, nobody's going to be appointed to any position for over a year after they're out of office.
That's what I'm great about.
I mean, and we're going to find it time and time again. And that is not promoting nonpartisan politics or doing the right thing. That is promoting politics as usual. And Mayor, I don't agree. I agree with you that nobody got back to you or you weren't. There was 40 open spots and you weren't appointed. But, you know, somewhere along the line, wrong has to stop. Period. Just period.
So you're saying we're wrong?
No. Hey, listen, you decide whatever you want here. I don't care when it is. Somewhere along the line, though, wrong has to stop. I'm not saying here. I mean, here, you know what? This is just a debate. It's got to be what it's got to be. I'm just wasting time and air right now. I drank a lot of coffee. What I'm saying probably going in one ear and out the other. The vote is going to be what the vote's going to be no matter what I say. You know what, though? I want people to have some extra time watching me. Cynthia said I talk more than her. I wanted to make sure I got that in. And, you know, but I am serious about it. I think you know what? I've come to believe this, that you're very committed to this town. And I think you've all come to believe I'm very committed to this town.
And some of us should be committed.
What?
I'm one of them.
Yeah, we all should be committed. I mean, it's been a tough day in Howell. But, you know, I do have a hard time with it. You know how I feel? You know, I'm not going to be
Call the roll, Mayor. Unless somebody else has a comment.
I've not made any comments on this.
Oh, you haven't?
No. The only comment.
Comment again.
Well, once we call the roll, that's it. So let's get any final comments. My comments are that we have 2 very capable people. I have the highest respect for Mike Howell. We're actually personal friends, and I'm privileged to be able to call him a friend.
I think a lot of us
And he owns a very reputable business. He provides a great service to the people in Ramtown with whom he provides his business service to. He has been an advocate of safe drinking water for this municipality. He is a person of the highest integrity, and I would vouch for him at any time with any group of people. And I am convinced that he will continue to serve this municipality. I cannot say enough good things about my friend Mike Howell. Similarly, I feel very much the same way about Wayne Lucy. Mr. Lucy served this municipality. He did so admirably. He ran in a campaign and lost. That's what happens when you run for office. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. He ran a campaign. He was unsuccessful in the outcome. But in the time he was here, he gave it everything he had. He has experience in municipal government, much like Mr. Howell does. And as it relates to our ordinance, and I appreciate everything the Deputy Mayor has said, I looked at this many, many times over because I wrote the ordinance. And Mr. Gannon, tightened it up and memorialized it, but this is something very near and dear to my heart. And the intent was that you would not take a position working for this municipality. You couldn't get a job working for Howell. And this is not a job. This happens to be an appointment to a committee that does provide for a stipend, and it does provide for the availability of medical benefits. But you're not an employee. You're not an employee of MRSA. You're not an employee of Howell Township. You are someone that is going to spend an extraordinary amount of time, much like being an elected official. And so as a result, there comes this stipend and the availability to medical benefits. Could someone infer that there is an interpretation and there's a stretch and et cetera, Perhaps they can. I would say that I have no issue with either of these candidates. They are both politically active. They are both qualified. Some may have personal issues with some of these individuals, which I respect, but clearly they both have qualifications. So having said that, you look like you have something else you want to say.
I'm just listening to you intently tonight, Mayor. That's all.
I saw you wrote
I
something
mean, who
down.
are you representing when you take this MRSA spot? Are you representing the Township of Howell?
The individual who is a MRSA liaison, their role, as I understand it, is to be an advocate for the ratepayers who are in the sewer service that are from Howell Township. They are to represent the people of Howell. They are to look out for their interests. They are to ensure that the rates are fair and the system is running effectively, because we have it is much like the Freehold Regional Board of Ed.
Exactly.
We have a seat on this sort of unilateral board of different towns that fill this consortium. So it is the same kind of model.
And I'll end with this, okay? And I really don't, it's going to be what it's going to be. But if the roles were reversed, I wonder how all four of you would look at this. Would you look at the same exact way? I mean, I try to take myself out of my position in life with what I do for a living and put myself in the other person's position. And it helps me to get a better look at it. Okay, I can't help, and this is part of what's going on in this township that people are looking at. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not making no judgments about it. I am telling you the truth about how people are looking at it. And I don't mean just this. I mean, everybody has to feel like the best interests of Howell are being served at all times. And do I think they were in the past administration? The answer's no. Not at every turn. And I don't believe that's right. Okay?
Well, you're entitled to your opinion, and we respect that. But I tell you right now, I sleep very well at night. And every decision that I make in the best interest of each and every one of those people that are out there looking at me.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Mayor, just a quick comment,
Yes.
if I may.
Coming back.
No,
Well,
let's end this.
just to Mr. Walsh's comments. When Mr. Walsh stated that if the shoe was on the other side or if it was reversed, that we would have something to say about it. The shoe was on the other side 5 years ago when these two individuals were appointed to MRSA. I remember sitting in the audience where Mayor Kanapka appointed Mrs. Molino and Mrs. Spano. I believe it was different years, but anyway, nonetheless, he appointed both of them. He appointed Mrs. Spano, as a matter of fact. I think he appointed them both on the same year, and I don't know why they're staggered now, but if memory serves me correctly. And Mrs. Spano has just ran for office as Mr. Kanapka's partner and lost to Mrs. Showmaker. And Mrs. Showmaker was sitting up here, and she actually voted to put Mrs. Spano on that committee because she understood that it wasn't about politics. And again, Mr. Walsh, you make it political again, and I have a tough time with that. I'm sorry to say. And just to add to Mr. Mike Howell, his qualifications, we're not going to get into. He's obviously more than qualified. So is Mr. Lucy, in my opinion. Mike knows. I consider him a friend of mine. I think he does the same, and I know that he would not ever take this personal or think that this is political. So.
Okay, we've concluded discussion. Roll call, please. This is the motion on the floor is to appoint Mr. Wayne Lucy to the 5-year position on MRSA. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mullave?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Wayne, don't take this the wrong way. It's only because of the ethics ordinance you helped pass last year. No.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, we have a few other items to get through. The first we've already done, which is 10-1, which is the issue dealing with the Wawa. Eminent domain, Township Council to review working draft. I'm going to recommend that we push this to the February
I was just going to say.
workshop in light of the hour.
Well, before, do we need to, continuing on the Mercer thing, do we need to, in public, tell Tom to go ahead and research the second part of that?
We probably should. Mr. Gannon, I think it is the wish of the council
I understood that was your wish.
that you contact one of our representatives to solicit their
Mayor,
interest in this.
in light of the hour, why don't we entertain 10-3 and 10-4 and then push the rest off?
Yeah, I would like to do 10-3. We could do 10-3 very, very quickly. I had presented to the council previously. The Veterans of Foreign War has requested access to utilize what was the former emergency management building. I'd like to recommend that we've had some time to think about it and mull it over. I would like to recommend that we enter into a lease, and that the lease be $1 per year, and that they have unilateral access to the building, and that condition to the lease, they are responsible as they've volunteered to make any cosmetic act, turn over, in essence, the building to a group of individuals who deserve no greater accolade than a permanent home.
My only concern, Mayor, is I think what we had asked for is some interpretation as to the liability of that, and I don't know that we got anything. I don't remember getting anything back in my packet from the manager in regards to that issue.
But if we have a lease, they will be responsible, of which they had no objection to maintaining all of the necessary insurances as a, quote, renter, so to speak, with respect to the liability and the other coverages.
Now, they would
I'm
realize.
sorry.
realize-
This is Helene Schlegel is here, the director of our
okay.
Recreation Department.
But you
But
came
this-
up anyways, right?
But this would be a lease that's similar to what the Howell Historical Society has, so on and so forth. So you may be able to shed some
Go ahead.
light on the liability issue.
Right. This is very similar to the sports organizations or the Howell Historical Society. What needs to happen is they're going to need to have insurance, just naming the township as additional insured. That's a normal, everyday policy that needs to be done.
Okay.
You know, Tom, that's just common practice.
Do it in my sleep, like just
Yeah.
about now.
Right. It's just common practice that they need
There's
to
about 4 or
provide.
5
Right.
specific provisions we put in the lease to protect the township from any liability.
Okay.
Well, I'm
I
just,
have a question,
I just
too,
have a
by the
question
way.
about the maintenance aspect. The mayor said they will be responsible with lighting and plumbing and what's so forth. They would have to still be required to go out for permits and so forth, right? I don't know that the Little League right now, they don't do any really maintenance on the buildings
Well,
themselves.
they do, but generally what happens is they have to follow the same proper procedure like anyone else. They have to file for permits. They have to let us know. What we do, for example, with the sports organizations, if they're going to make an improvement, all right, they generally petition my office, and then, of course, I end up going to Bill. All the proper permits are filed. We actually file them for them. They're nonprofit. We file them for them. We make sure that everything's, according to.
Would they be coming through you just like the sports
Well,
league?
no, this OEM VFW thing. I don't know who would really. I would say
This is
the
much
clerk's
like-
office. Not the.
This,
yeah.
in my view, this would be identical to how we have subcontracted and now have a lease with the behavioral management company that has a lease with the township on the property that we have on Route 524
Okay, I got you.
for that facility. We will certainly need to work with, in my view, township attorney and the VFW's attorney to work out all of the whereases and therefores. The intent would be that they would like to go in and improve the heat and fix the paint and fix many of the interior cosmetic issues, completely subjected to any and all application and approval processes, would like to actually make certain improvements to that building, and Obviously, it's still our building. They would be our leasee, subject to whatever terms and conditions are customary for a lease of that kind of a facility.
And we have common past practice, so I'm sure that, you know, the engineer or in the clerk's office can just work out all the logistics.
What, you know what, I just mentioned to the mayor, and this is for Bill. Bill, can you do me a favor, too, in regards to leasing out buildings? Can you bring me up to date on the potato barn? Okay? I can't recall what the limitations were of that building for us to do something with that. Was there a drawback? Was there? I can't.
We ran the sewer line to the building. The electric, for all intents and purposes, is a pole, but we'd have to drop a pole and put a new service in. The floor is, again, maybe an inch thick, so it's not a floor that's going to support any type of load. But I don't know how we got on this subject anyway. What my concern with this whole lease arrangement with this OEM building was, we were going to sell it probably quote unquote as is, possibly to the water company,
right,
or high bid, or whatever we want to do. The building has been abandoned for the most part and exposed to the elements. I think there's a heater in the basement that just to keep the pipes from bursting. But the septic hasn't been used in years. I believe it was on oil. I think there's an unregistered tank because it's under the required size that may be a potential problem. And these are issues that I don't know if we're going to have to address them ourselves, or if it's how all this is going to tie into this.
We probably need an assessment. We probably need to really.
He's talking about the OEM building.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Well, I think before we put these people in this building, we want to make sure that nothing's going to blow up on them or anything like that, and that there's no tanks in the ground that.
Or that they really know the extent of the improvements that would need to be done.
I mean, I don't think that their intent is to go out and remove oil tanks off the ground or anything like that.
No, but my point is that even with this preferred behavioral sciences, I think we've spent hours every day going through either phone calls or meeting there, and a lease that was pretty much cut and dried, and there's a lot of hidden things and things that you're not aware of until you actually get to it. So to just broad brush it is very difficult.
Okay.
How is this building any different than the possibly? Is it as bad of a shape as that barn that we're trying to knock down?
The OEM building is it's a house. Somebody could live in it. It is a completely inhabitable building. I mean, it clearly is.
Sounds like Aline wouldn't live in
it. It is a completely habitable
building.
What are you moving in? The OEM uses that building to this day as their command center. It just didn't suit their needs the way it was structured.
I think you need to. I think what Bill is saying is there are some issues with the building that
it's abandoned. Bill?
Well, they use it, I guess, as a meeting place. But again, the heat is not needs to be upgraded, overhauled, completely replaced.
Correct.
But you said they haven't flushed the toilets in years.
Well, it's not used on a regular basis.
That's like a certain friend of ours who uses the word ousted all the time. Let's use a different word other than abandoned. I mean, it's just they're not using it as actively as they had been. It clearly needs some interior work, and the VFW is so desperate. Keep in mind, you know what they have now? Nothing. They have no meeting place. They have no hall. We have a whole new generation of returning veterans of foreign conflict, and they don't have a home.
Mr. Novak and I speak on a regular basis. So yeah,
you and who?
Mr. Novak and I speak regularly.
The commander is a wonderful gentleman, and they are willing to assume whatever things need to be repaired. They've represented to me that in their organization they have retired plumbers who still are licensed.
Well,
they have retired electricians.
With leases and loopholes and things that, like Bill is speaking of, you just need to make sure that that's all explicitly put.
Spelled out.
Yeah. Mayor, can I suggest
lease.
that we do that perhaps an assessment of the property be done, and that any and all improvements that need to be done before these people can actually move in, that they understand what the extent of it is.
What I'd like to suggest we do is we bring them in, we give them the lay of the land of what it would be they're inheriting. that it will be a lease arrangement, so that there is total and full disclosure. And this is a group of many of whom are retired veterans who are prepared to get in there and roll their sleeves up and make it their home. So, I mean, so long as we can at least give management direction, let them know conceptually we agree. We need to work out the details. If they're amenable to those details, then we found a home for the VFW.
Absolutely.
I have a whole different line of questioning. At one point, the water company, Jersey American I think it was, wanted to put a water tower or something. They wanted to use the back part of that property. Does this lease in any way preclude us from letting that lot itself be used for other purposes?
No, you're leasing the building.
It depends
probably-
on how you write the
Yeah,
lease.
It's probably subject to our discretion that we may want to add in there that we would have to
So-
have the right.
So would the VFW need the property for any reason other than the building?
I think what they have represented is they know they can't use it as sort of as a hall. They know they can't be used as a banquet hall. They know there can't be a saloon of sorts inside for members to congregate during a sporting event or during some sort of a session. They're looking at it primarily for meeting space. And
That
there
just
is an
all needs
adjacent
to be
parking
spelled
lot.
out
It
very
does.
carefully in
So
the
are
document.
So I guess what I'm asking, are we in a way able to leave the lot and land behind it still open for future use for other purposes for the town?
We can reserve whatever
Whatever
use we might
how they
have
wanna
for
work.
the property.
I mean,
In the lease agreement.
let's remember that it was originally our intent to sell that property and the land entirely and have no access to it. That was the recommendation, that once the new pole barn was built, we were going to sell it and walk away from it.
And it was to the water company, I think.
And the water company was one of the companies interested. Mr. Davis at least represented to me that they no longer have an interest in that, and we'd have to find someone else to buy it. So why don't we do this? Let's direct, Mr. Davis is ill, but when he's back, Ms. Woolman, we need a meeting with whoever he deems is necessary, probably the attorney, lay out, here's what you're inheriting. It's going to be a lease. They need to be on our terms. Mr. Nunziato should be there, and let them know we're in agreement with it, and let's begin to make this happen. Everybody agree?
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a
Second.
motion. We have a second. Any additional remarks? Mr. Walsh, you've been conspicuously quiet on this point.
Done talking for the night.
All right.
Okay? Roll call.
Mr. Malabay?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, and then the other item you wanted to talk about?
I think the ethics ordinance, Deputy Mayor Mavleve requested the council to support a bill that is in front of the legislature. Maybe he'd like to speak on it.
Well, my computer was acting up tonight, so I couldn't get into the disk, but the little bit I did glance over the weekend at that, I believe that the ordinance that was presented to us to discuss is the wrong ordinance. It's the ordinance here tonight on this disk. It's the state model of pay-to-play, which is not what I had in mind.
Oh.
What I had in mind was a specific ordinance in front of the legislators that was presented by Senator Kirchner of, I believe she's in the, she represents some of townships in Monmouth County, not this one. Was 30th District or something, perhaps?
It's Senator Karcher. It is the 12th.
12th, I'm sorry, 12th District. We are in the 30th. Sorry about that. So, and basically what it called for was to, and I have given, I believe, the number to Mr. Davis, I believe. Basically what it calls for is that, you know how we always go after the elected officials when they take bribes from developers and so forth. With this one, which I swear we should, obviously, I'm in agreement with that. But also this one went beyond that. It actually went after the developers who offer these, whether it's money or perks to any elected official, or not just elected officials, but any township official, whether it's a zoning board member or planning board member and so forth, and go after these developers big time. And I believe, if I remember correctly, just from reading the ordinance that she was proposing, it called for some real hefty fines, as much as 5 times the value of the land, you know, depending on the degree of the, you know, the crime committed. But so I thought it was a great thing to be in favor of that. I can't see how any legislator would not actually support that. And I think all the townships should get behind that and support it. So that's basically what the intent of this discussion was.
Okay, so we're not prepared to take action on this
Well,
tonight because we don't have the
not
right.
until we see the, I like to see, you know, I'm sure as you are, as well as you do, you like to see what the actual resolution is or ordinance that's been proposed.
All right, so we would like to get, Ms. Woolman, a copy of the bill as proposed by Senator Ellen Karcher, Monmouth, Marlborough of the 12th District. Let's get that recirculated. Let's take a look at that. And if that, in fact, is the right piece of legislation, then we can comment on at that at the February workshop meeting. Okay. With respect to the Howell guardrail and the evaluation of speeding fines, can you please add at least 10-6 to the February? And I do apologize to the council, but I promised this resident that I would bring this up tonight.
What's that?
And Mr. Nunziato has the details. We have a very serious situation at the corner of Howell Road and Vanderveer. And I drive by it routinely, and I can see the tire tracks permanently impressed
Yes.
on the
Oh, on
front
the island,
lawn.
well, not the island, but
on the front lawn of
We all
this
have
more than
this
90-degree
resident.
angle turn there.
I have spoken to this resident. They're a delightful family. They are literally afraid to stand on their property because of the accelerated speeds that people are driving, and they're making, if you can envision coming down Howell Road, heading toward the intersection of 33 and what becomes 5 Points Road, when they make they being the drivers, when drivers make that right-hand turn, they're cutting it entirely too close, and they invariably go up on the lawn on these people's property, and they're afraid to go outside. So, to be very brief, I had to break the news to this resident that we were not in the financial position to redesign the roadway, to acquire adjacent property, and to completely reconstruct how that road could be situated.
So we're not going to go make a right turn before their house.
Although there could be, and I've recommended, a sign, Mr. Nunziato has agreed, that cautions people about the nature of the curve, and that potentially maybe we have to talk about whether or not you can make it a no right-hand turn. I don't know. There's other ways by going down Bennett that you could still get there, but most important and more immediate is the township installing a guardrail, which they're not thrilled about having, but a steel guardrail on their property so that if, God forbid, somebody does make this wild turn,
You're talking about in the triangle there?
it's not the triangle.
It's
It is their property. When you are coming down Howell Road,
It's
heading
like-
toward Wawa,
it is. It's like that
and it's a point, but that's their property.
Yeah.
And when you make that right-hand turn, people are cutting it too
you mean when
close,
they-
and they're
when
going
they go
on the
down
lawn.
Vanderveer?
Before you,
Correct.
Before you ask for our opinion on that, I want to ask Bill a question, actually. When the Board of Ed brought up the Windler Road, Aldrich Road issue, which is exactly the same kind of point, that there was huge issues for them to try to make the buses make that turn, we eventually did it on our own, where we dug out the road and got permission from the owner to dedicate land to us that we can put that right turn and then they make the left, now the buses can do it. And I don't think that was a huge expense to us because we did it ourselves. So where this owner's not willing to give up some of their property to the
Well-
south, I guess, or
Well, the owner doesn't have the property at this point to give.
further south?
Correct. In other words, you would have to basically
Go up
almost
against their
buy
house.
lot. I mean, they do have a 100-year-old house.
So whose property is further enough
The-
south?
The farm field across the street.
So have we talked to them at all?
Well, this was in Mike Vina's 2004, 2005 realignment with the 33, that famous 33 bypass off-ramp reconfiguration, all that stuff.
But forgetting whether we do a ramp or not, just to make a right
Well,
turn,
no-
much like, have we talked to that farmer?
Well, in order to make that work, with the sight distances and the speeds that are on those roads, it's roughly almost a 7-figure number.
No
Even if we
problem.
did it ourselves? No
Absolutely.
problem. About 500 in his pocket, right? You ready to throw your wallet on the table?
Bill, we don't have the funding.
So when we did the
to
Windler
do-
Road,
We don't have the funding to do the
Plus condemnation fees.
guardrail in there?
Oh, no,
No, that's different. What Peter is talking about is the best,
Get rid of
safest
it.
way
Oh,
to fix
yeah,
it.
it's to realign it.
Remediate,
Oh, yeah.
realign, reconstruct.
so it's only one way coming up towards,
Oh, yeah.
from,
But we've been down this road, and it's the funding and the.
It is my recommendation.
How much was it to do, just out of curiosity, how much was it to do Windler and Aldrich from your own people's perspective? And
I'd say
We
it
have
was
to acquire property.
probably
with that.
somewhere between, all said and done, 25, 35,000, something in that
So that
area.
owner there just donated the property to us? He didn't-
No, we bought an
Yeah,
easement
we
from
had to
him
acquire
at market
property for
value.
that.
So you bought an easement, you didn't buy the property. So what's the
Correct.
difference here?
Well, he still owns the property, still pays reduced taxes on it.
No, what's the difference from us going to the farmer and buying an easement from him, is what I'm saying.
Well, he's not gonna want an easement through his
Well,
farm
how do we
field.
know?
But an easement, I mean.
How do we
it's-
know?
The road still has to be realigned.
No, well, if he to dig out the dirt and lay the asphalt, you're saying it's like $25,000. What we're worried about is $1 million purchase of land. I don't want to purchase the land. I want to get the easement through that farmer's land for that 80-foot road. It's worth talking about. Because if they don't want the guardrail, it's not an aesthetic eyesore. This other solution still works. I'm just thinking out of the box. I mean, you guys can shoot at me if you
Fair
want.
point.
But,
Everything. There's people who put big
Well, look,
boulders.
here's my honest opinion. We got to help this family.
Quick fix.
I think on an interim basis, to help these people, we need to appropriate whatever minuscule
We
funds
don't
is
even have-
necessary.
We don't have to. If you recall last year, I requested, I think, $50,000 or $100,000 for special road
Yes.
projects, i.e. speed bumps and
Correct.
traffic surveys and et cetera. We should come under with the speed humps because there's a way you can configure them so you buy enough
Are
pieces.
they here yet, Bill?
I was just gonna say.
Not
I'm
yet.
only teasing.
I know.
We're not going to go
We've
there.
had this discussion.
We
But
have.
I do have enough in that reserve, you know, you plan for the future. I could
Good.
fund
So
it
we
out
can
of
put a
last year's budget.
guardrail in.
Absolutely.
I'm pleading. Let's.
but they don't want it, you said.
Well,
No,
they're
well-
not wild about
It's
it.
short term.
They understand it would be a short-term solution. They have gotten email correspondence, you guys have gotten it, where they said they will take a guardrail to provide immediate protection to their family. So I think we need to put the guardrail in, and we need to put in the sign cautioning people about the complexity of that turn. And then to the deputy mayor's point, we should attempt to open up a dialogue about what else we can do. Now, I was very candid with this family. I said, listen, you know, we have 52,000 residents we need to support. We cannot expend $100,000 or $200,000 for one house.
No.
But we will
the only-
explore any possibility
The
we can.
easement purchase.
You know, so if you can open up a dialogue, Mr. Nunziato, and get back to us about what would it take, but we've got a situation now, we've got to help these people. So
I
do we
actually-
agree? Let's get
Oh,
rid
yeah.
of the guardrail. Mr.
Absolutely.
Malave, Mr.
Yes.
Tabasco, Mr. Walsh, Mrs. Showmaker. All right, would you please contact the family, let them know we've given you direction, work it out with them cosmetically. We're going to put the guardrail in, and that we are going to attempt to find out what else could be done. We don't want to mislead them about, we're going to rebuild a road, we're going to buy property, we're going to this and that. We're going to try.
Isn't the farm one of the farms that's in the preservation fund under contract to be part of the acreage preserved? So we have
Be the
some.
one across the street from them.
Right, so I'm thinking that might be one of the ones, I mean, I could be wrong, we have to
I'm
ask
not
John,
sure.
who's not here, but if that is somebody that's in our program, and we have precedent, we've worked out things together before, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I would
it's
still
worth looking
entertain
at.
talking
And, you know,
about
we did
buying the
talk
easement.
about acquisition of some of this property has been talked about around the 33 exit ramp, right? Did we not? When it came to looking at solutions for the Route 33 exit ramp, a part of that was the redesign of that street.
That street.
So you have some of the cost figures already.
Well,
Okay.
that was to put a whole ramp in,
That was a bigger
north
thing.
and south and everything on it.
All right, so you know what you're doing on that, Mr. Nunziato. You know what? You want somebody to make a formal motion to direct him to do this, put this guardrail?
I'll
in?
move that we put a guardrail in for the family at the corner of Howell Road, not Howell Road, yeah, Vanderveer, that is Howell.
Vanderveer.
How and Vanderveer.
Howell and
That is Howell Road.
I
Howell Road.
second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any final remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malabay?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor Sabella?
Yes. All right, we're going to push this other thing to February. Mr. Tabasco, you have a question?
Yeah, I do have one comment that I want to put on for discussion at another meeting with regards to our public participation at each of these meetings. It does get a little out of hand. I'd like to change it a little bit where it is a certain minute limitation unless you, as the chair of the meeting, give them an extended period of time beyond like 3 or 4 minutes. Because some of these people do take 30 or 40 minutes to get to the point, and we have to understand that this is a business meeting. For us to be doing the meeting's business at 12:25 in the night is a disservice to the 52,000 residents that expect us to do good business, right? So when somebody goes on their soapbox, that hurts the town. So we need to have some constraint on the length of time that people speak. And, no, we ran on open public participation, which we'll have. So I want to put that up for discussion, where you could still give somebody more time if it's a discussion issue worthy of going 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But if it takes them 30 minutes to get to the point, and they have a constraint of 4 minutes to get to the point, that forces it. So.
Okay, that's a good point. We need to do
Mayor,
it. Yes.
I have just two. I just want to make sure I didn't want to talk under correspondence, but Ms. Penny is going to take care of a email that we received from Marianne Grady in response to a fundraiser that they're going to have an art auction at Southern Firehouse in regards to some license or something that they need.
Okay, I haven't
And
seen that one yet.
she said that she's going to look into it
Good.
and find out because it needs to be done. And Mrs. Lukowski, I had that, and
She came here tonight.
yeah, and we took
fixed
care
it.
of that. The other question, and I think it's this gentleman sitting in front of us, but I'm not sure. I could be wrong. We had a gentleman that came before us for the planning board for an interpretation of something, and I don't know, it might not have been you, for an interpretation on the ordinance, was it the tree ordinance, the woodlands management ordinance? Something had changed, Bill, from the time he had his approvals to now.
Different person.
Okay, do you know what I'm talking about, though?
I-
And
I-
why he sat in front of the planning board, and he technically needed to come to another, I don't know if he needed to come here, where he was, or why he was where he was at. There was a gentleman that came before the planning board, they sent him to the planning board, he sat, do you remember, Joe?
I do.
He sat and he waited.
Oh, yeah.
He has an approved plan to build something. The woodlands management plan was approved after. He needed an interpretation why he couldn't get his permit because the woodlands management plan should not have affected him because he already had his approval, so on and so forth. But I'm going to call Barbara Capitan and reach out to her to make sure because it was a little mishandled.
Was it a recent agenda? I mean, I could do the same.
Yes, it was last Thursday, the first
Okay.
Thursday of the month.
I'll make a note.
Reorganization night on the planning board. Ask Barbara, she'll know. He was sent to the planning board, and but I wanted to make sure he was taken care of.
May I just, can I? just
Go
a
right
quick
ahead, sir.
Thing, thank you. A while back, we had a gentleman from the Roundtown section of Howell. I believe he lived in the nearby Easy Street and Newton's Corners Road. And I think Bill knows what I'm getting at.
The orange cans there.
With the flowing zone there.
And the orange cans.
I tell you, I drove by, as I always do, since I live in that area. The other night, I came very close to slipping off the road there. It was the water level was, it was probably a good 6 inches of water there. And I could see where it potentially could be a real big problem. And I know that it has been looked at before, and I do remember the conversation where Mr. Nanziato said that one of the options was we unfortunately had to obtain some land to go through people's property to get into where we need to go with the water. Whatever we have to do, I mean, we can put a man on the moon, we can resolve this issue hopefully soon, because it's really becoming a big issue now. I could see it. I could see, God forbid something happens there was, somebody can't stop and another car is coming. So what can you, if anything, tell me, Bill, or anyone for that matter, about this? How, are we doing anything about it? Is it being researched further, or we just kind of letting it go?
Need an easement, right? On one of the
We have researched it. We basically designed it conceptually, based on the aerials and the GIS, the elevations and the capacity. Right now, it's really would just be a matter of funding for it, getting somebody to actually do a survey so we could stake out and do a meets and bounds description of the acquisition properties and getting it appraised and either A, making offers, or B, I hate to say that condemnation word.
No, don't say that word.
Well, again, if you're just buying an easement, you're just negotiating a price because it'll still be their property.
Yeah, but when you go through people's property with water, people right away, it's a red flag. They think that it's going to be an issue for them down the road.
But again, if you do it in a closed pipe system, you could use manholes instead of inlets. You can do it so it's, very unobtrusive.
I'm of the opinion that we do need to research this a little bit further and actually try and come up with a solution.
You'll have something in my capital budget for this year.
Okay. Capital budget is that big, huh? Okay.
Any other comments?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
12:29.
Good night, everyone.
Drive safe, ladies and gentlemen.